Welcome to Northbound, Alaska, the Trucking Files, a podcast where we talk to haul road drivers, both past and present, to carry on the knowledge and experience of one of the toughest roads on Earth. On this episode, we sit down with Dwight Buzby. Dwight is a fifth-generation Alaskan, grew up in Fairbanks and Salcha, and has over 3 million miles on the haul road alone.
Spec sheet. They come standard with it, and they didn't. Johnson wanted to save money, but it was like it didn't cost anything extra.
No, it doesn't.
Oh. So yeah, we're all sweating to death getting up there. And unless you took a shower in Prudhoe Bay, I mean, you're wearing dirt and everything else in that truck.
Yeah.
Because of the no air conditioner.
Well, I used to push old Doug there at Irish with the winch truck, and we'd go up there. He would laugh at me because there's no air conditioner in that old Kenworth that I was pushing with, and so I'd wear my painting mask with the canisters on there, right, and both windows open, and I had the kids had bought me this stupid Viking helmet with horns, so I'd wear that just because it was kind of fun. But you go up there and you can't even barely see the back of the trailer for the dust, and you got to stay close because you need to be close when you're pushing, and the dust just boiling through there, and that truck would have this much dirt on everything inside that cab.
Oh yeah, and every time you turn the fan on, it blew all over.
Yeah.
The sound is on this thing.
What's going on?
I'm trying to turn the sound off on this thing. I guess if it comes on, that'll be entertaining.
That's just part of the show.
They're digging the road out so they can come over the pass.
This is Mr. Lonnie.
Lonnie Lofts.
No.
Oh, I thought it was Mr. Lonnie.
Mr. Lonnie.
And Mr. Aaron if you're from Texas.
We were helping the state. The road was closed.
Oh yeah.
We were bored sitting there.
I spent 72 hours halfway down the hill there. We had 12 avalanches in one night, and the wind was doing about 80. And me and George Lowe and somebody else, we were all stuck just above the waterfall. And I went down to George's truck, because he's the first one in line, and the avalanche was right in front of him, and then he had a bottle of whiskey, so we decided to have a little, and we turned the radio off. We were having quite a little, but I think we finished it. But I went back to my truck, and I'm like, man, either I got drunk or this hill is really freaking steep because I'm on my hands and knees and I'm crawling up. And a damn avalanche came down in between us, and I get up to the top and I'm looking way down at my truck. I'm like, holy smokes.
You were actually crawling up the hill?
Yeah, it was really steep. I thought maybe I had too much of that whiskey, and I thought, well, shoot. I'm crawling up this thing, and I'm like, I got to get back to my truck. And then I'm looking down at it, and I realized I'd climbed the avalanche. And then one had came down too and buried the back of my trailer at the same time, and they thought we were avalanched out because everybody was on top of the hill and they were shining their lights down. All they could see was avalanche and no trucks.
Oh man!
And we had the radio shut off, so apparently that the state even thought they were getting ready to send a rescue team up with us because somebody had a snow machine down on the other end and to see what happened to us. And then George turned the radio back on, and by the time I got back to my truck, everybody was talking. But the state got so worried about it, they took all our names and addresses and who we worked for in case we did get buried. Because that first night, the wind was literally, I think they had recorded gusts up to 80 down at the state camp there. And it was fucking howling, man. It was hard to sleep.
That's fast down there at state camp.
And it was howling because, you couldn't hardly even sleep in the truck. It would just shake you right out on the floor for the first night. And we were there 72 hours before they finally got dug up to us from the south side. Then there was like 40 trucks on top of the hill and that many on the bottom. And they dug into one of the grocery trucks. That was back when the state camp still had a kitchen. Remember we used to go in there and pay for a meal?
Yeah.
And they still had a kitchen. They cooked up gobs of food for everybody, for us, and up there, and hauled us all up coffee on that lone snow machine. That guy made lots of trips up and down the hill. The wind quit blowing after the first night, but
yeah, I bet he had a hard time seeing a few times.
Oh yeah, It was awful. I mean, when we got out of there, they cut a trail through that, and I think that was like 80 or 81 somewhere in there, and they cut a trail through that, and it was just barely mirror wide. When you went down there, you had to stay right perfect, or you're scratching your mirrors on the
Avalanche?
avalanche. And they had literally 12 avalanches in one night from the top of the pass to the bottom.
I was trying to think how many they had that night, because it just kept. We were there for 2 days, and it just kept coming down. They'd work on it and come down again, and
Well, that's what, we were there for 72 hours. I was there 72 hours before the snow blower and they gave up on the snow blower because there's too many big rocks. They kept shearing the shear pins off, and so they finally, it was loaders and a cat.
it takes a lot longer when you don't have your blower.
Yeah, they should have had that big blower they got on Thompson Pass. It's got a V16 Jimmy. The old one had a V16 Jimmy for the blower motor and a little 671 to run it was one of them four-wheel. That thing would throw a rock a foot in diameter without shearing the pin.
Wow.
And
Man.
you had to very well announce yourself when he was blowing snow, because he's got 2 screaming Jimmies in there and a big snow blower, and you make sure you shut that fucker off before you went by him. Because he even said,
I didn't realize they got rocks on Thompson.
oh God, lots of them. Depends on where you're at. If you're on this side of the hill, yeah, you'll get rocks.
Huh.
Yeah, that was funny though. That thing would throw stuff. I mean, it would throw shit a quarter of a mile, that big snowblower.
Oh, man.
That thing was awesome. I just liked watching it work, because, I mean, it's like most snowblowers, they kind of go out and, you dribble out there. That thing, shit, throw it out there half a mile. He had that old 16-cylinder Jimmy wound up to 2100, and it's blowing snow.
Oh, man.
That thing was
That's
funny.
a pretty big motor there on the.
You know how they used to, they kind of built it like a truck chassis and just had a flat cab, and you could drive it from either side.
Oh.
So it crab steer, so it had 4-wheel steer, so they could crab. So they'd crab the blower into the snow and leave the back end of the truck kind of out where it was a little clearer, and they'd go along there blowing that shit out of there.
What'd you do today, Aaron?
I've just been on the phone and drinking coffee all day.
Cool.
Well, I just met Dwight.
That's scary.
Before you got here. He was already here. He said the dogs woke him up this morning. Well,
Yeah.
they wake you up every morning.
Every morning at 4:30, it's like they know what time. I don't even have to set an alarm. They know exactly when I'm supposed to get up to go to work. That's not when I like to get up and go to work, but that's when everybody else decrees I should.
Dwight, so I don't even know where to start with you. I've heard so many stories. You were born in Alaska, obviously.
Yep.
You got family that's been here generations.
Yep, I'm a 3rd generation born in Fairbanks, actually. My dad and I were born in the same room over at St. Joseph's Hospital 25 years apart, which is now a bank, the old hospital.
What year was that?
I was born in 58.
58.
Right at the
Oh,
end.
you're my mom's age.
Right. All my friends
So
were,
what? You were in the old hospital?
yeah,
The old.
St. Joseph's right downtown.
Where the
Okay.
church is, so the
right,
Catholic
right
church.
behind the
Back.
church, yeah.
Yeah,
That used to be
Yeah.
the hospital.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually had this finger sewed back on in there too, and I stuck an axe in my knee and I got it sewed up in there too.
An axe?
What was?
Well, I missed,
Well, this is when you were a kid doing child
No,
labor
this was
stuff?
when I was about 12. Here, I chopped my finger off cutting kindling out at the camp, and so I came in there and I just had to hold my hand like this, and I said, Grandma said, "What's the matter?" And I said, "Oh, I need a Band-Aid." And as I went and looked, like my finger goes dangle. It was just hanging by the skin. So we had to wait until 7 o'clock so we could call on the big radio to get Paul Gapin to fly out and pick me up. And I stuck it back on there, and Granddad wrapped it up with tape, and yeah, it's kind of cool. It took 48 stitches to put it back on.
But you can bend it pretty good still, huh?
Yeah, except when it gets cold. As soon as it hits about 35 below, it bends like that, and it won't move.
Oh.
So you can always tell the temperature out because of my glove, my finger's sticking like this.
So everyone will say, "How cold is it?" And just ask Dwight.
Yeah, if it's sitting like that, it's 35 below.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
But yeah, it was kind of cool. And then I got to fly the airplane. Paul let me fly, and Granddad had thought that it probably hurt a little bit. So
On the way to the hospital? You're flying the plane with your finger like that?
Yeah, I flew the plane. And then it was kind of hurting, but I had a couple of whiskey and sevens in me, so it felt not too bad.
When did you learn to fly?
Well, I was 14. Yeah.
So you were raised down there by Bill Sewell.
Yeah, well, his dad bought our old sawmill from my grandpa, and me and Bill grew up together. Yeah.
Okay.
When was
That's
that?
our old homestead.
Oh, where the sawmill was?
Yeah, that's we had 160 acres right there. All that land was ours. That airstrip was ours. We built that on an old island.
Well, Grandpa's log house come out of that sawmill, didn't it?
Yeah.
All shit, 3/4 of the log houses in Fairbanks come out of that sawmill.
Okay.
The old lodges, the Triff's Lodge, the Holly's old place there, which is the Salcha Lodge now, those are all logs from our sawmill.
The Salt Jacket Lodge there?
Yeah.
Okay. Where was your guys' sawmill at out there?
Just right down behind Flag Hill there.
Okay.
You know where the
The
airplane's in the roof of the house
I think so.
Yeah.
on Harding Lake?
Yeah, me and Bill put that up there. We stuck it up
You
there.
flew it in there?
Yeah, well, no, we didn't fly it in there. We actually had the tail of one, and we thought, well, this thing is kind of junk. We can't use it, so we made a little frame and screwed it to the roof so it looked like the airplane flew into the roof. It was kind of fun. Conversation
Yeah,
piece.
because then you go south, go down around the corner, and there's sawmill. Take it right at the bottom.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you guys sold that sawmill to Bill?
No, Bill's dad, Jim Sewell, Jim and Harriet, they were great folks, and all their kids came up here. And Bill came up and worked. Jim was working for my grandpa as a guide, and he came from Minnesota, so he liked we really liked him, and they liked it up here, so they moved up here. He was actually a Case tractor dealer and stuff in Minnesota. Jim was.
When did they come up here?
Oh, it would have been in the 60s.
Huh. Didn't they live over there off Mission too? Didn't they?
Oh, that was after Jim sold the sawmill to Bill.
Okay.
And Jim and Harriet moved in and built that place off Mission Road. Kathy
beside.
still lives there, one of the daughters.
Okay.
Yeah, she made Leroy and Timmy clean their junk out of there, so it's pretty spiffy now. The boys are collectors.
I've drove by there once or twice.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So Kathy made them clean it up.
So you were flying when you were a kid? You were
Oh, I learned I flew when I was like 14.
okay.
I had my grandpa had this old plane, and I really liked it, and he said, well, if you can fix it, you can have it. So I fixed it in 3 months. He didn't think I'd get it done. I got it in the air, and I taught myself how to fly it around and scared the shit out of everybody. And I overhauled the engine 3 times before somebody told me that that's an air-cooled motor, and it has tapered cylinders, and you have to fit the rings to it. It would run fine, but it just use oil like a bastard because it'd score the cylinders, because you had to put the rings down in the bottom where it's narrow and shave them to fit. So because it's air, yeah. So when the engine heats up, it expands and the cylinder's even.
Okay.
So if you didn't do that, they got really tight down in the bottom end when you first started it up cold, and it would score the barrels and make it use oil, So, but back then you could buy a cylinder kit for, they were like $50 a piece for a new piston and a cylinder. Now they're like they're $1,000 a piece without the cylinder, without the piston.
Well, I know when we were rebuilding the Cummins, we would always size the ring to the cylinder.
Yeah, you had to, or it wouldn't be right.
The Cummins dealers and mechanics down there weren't doing it, and next thing you know, you have cracked rings because they never gapped them. They just used the rings as they come in the box from the factory. You had to gap each ring. Usually, the top ring never fit.
No, it never would, actually.
Never would. A lot of times, the second ring down wouldn't fit. So you put her down that cylinder, and you gap each ring for each cylinder.
Yeah, you used to buy these kits, and they'd come with a sleeve and a piston and a wrist pin in it, and you'd think you could trust the factory. Well, no, because you might have only one that was put together right. So you'd have to take them all apart. They'd even have the I've seen the oil scrapers upside down on the piston. I'm like, who the hell put this together, you know? And they'd come like that. Couldn't trust them. You had to take them all apart and make sure everything was right. I've seen them put all the rings on with all the gaps in line.
Oh yeah.
So the oil just runs down them like you're just pouring it out of a can, you know, when you
gosh.
start it up.
Oh man.
Yeah, you could always tell if the rings hadn't been gapped. When you took it apart, they'd be cracked in 3 places. Is
Yeah.
that right?
Yeah,
Three
about
places
at least
they'd be
3,
cracked.
yeah.
Yeah. The ring would come apart because when it got hot, it couldn't expand.
Yeah, it couldn't expand. It had no room to
And then
expand.
break.
Yeah.
So then that ring, those pieces are just floating in there.
So, Dwight, what was it like growing up? Were you growing up in Salcha or North Pole or?
No, I grew up in Salcha and then mostly in Palmer when I was a kid because my dad moved down there because he owned a gas station, and then him and my uncles were the Herman boys. They had Herman Brothers Construction, so that was where my dad ended up going there with his 2 brother-in-laws. So, and that was a good place to work.
In Wasilla?
Palmer.
Oh, Palmer.
We lived right on the airstrip in Palmer,
Okay.
and
Where were you when the flood of '67 happened?
I was in Palmer, but we came up here and helped because we got most of our families up here. So,
Yeah.
and it flooded pretty good. Everything in town had like at least 4 feet of water. Everything was in 4 feet of water, at least.
Yeah, I talked to Dad, and we already recorded him, but he was saying that in North Pole didn't really flood that much.
No, it didn't too bad. It got wet, but not Fairbanks. Family in here. I mean, everybody had a basement, so they were completely full of silty water. I mean, the water wasn't a problem. It was just it spent months shoveling the silt out of them.
Yeah.
You know how that silt is. It gets into everything.
Got into a bunch of insulation too, right?
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, you got to throw it away.
Yeah.
You can't get it dry.
Man.
It's like trying to fix a burnt house. It's just cheaper to knock it down, throw a match in the sumbitch, and build a new one. Because
Yeah.
by the time you try to do all that shit, you actually spend more money than just building one again.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, or like a firehouse, you can't ever get the smell out of it. I don't care what you do to it if it's had a fire in there.
Well, when did you guys move back to Salcha or Fairbanks area?
I never. My family never did. The rest of my siblings didn't. I did. But I left when I was like 14 because I liked it up here.
So you just moved out at 14 and said, I'm
Yep.
going back to Fairbanks?
I borrowed my dad's car without telling him, and I drove to Fairbanks at 14. And I ran out of gas. And my dad figured out I was missing, so he came up and gave me some gas and wished me well, and away I went. He was a good dad. He was most awesome.
He wasn't
guy.
upset that you
Well, no,
borrowed
he was
his car?
upset, but he just kind of gave me some direction, and off I went.
Where did you run out of gas at?
Oh, about halfway to Glen Allen.
Okay.
It was an old Pontiac Catalina. I still remember. I love them cars too. I still remember that car.
What color was that?
It was purple.
Okay.
Yeah, it was purple. It was a cool car. That car was so you'd be cruising down the road in that thing, and you felt like you were doing like 40 miles an hour, and you look down and it's going 100. I mean, it just sit there and just glide along down the road like, wow, this thing is awesome. You could get 4 kids in the front seat and 4 in the back seat and about 6 in the trunk if you wanted to.
Oh man. When did your family get to Alaska?
Oh, 1860, I think, the first time.
Wow, really?
1860?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the Russians still owned the place then.
Gold seekers.
Yeah. No, actually, Trapper.
Oh, okay.
Trapper, yeah.
So where did your family originally come from in the States?
Well, they came through Montana. I don't know if it was a territory yet, but then they came from New Jersey.
Okay. New Jersey
And then
originally.
from there, before that, it was Scotland.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm mostly Scottish.
So they come overland into Alaska?
Yeah,
Through Canada then.
yeah, up through the Canada, and then, I mean, they made trips on the boat after that, and not all the family was born here. They, because there was nothing back then, so you'd get on the boat with the big fat girl and go back south where you could find a doctor and have them down there. But that happened in my great grandfather's and stuff time.
So did they have books or anything like that talking about their trips or letters or anything like that back in the day?
Well, they probably do. I don't know where they would be.
Oh, okay.
Just, get great grandpa or grandpa when you were a kid talking about that shit. We aren't very talkative when it comes to stuff like that. It's just, a day's work basically to us. It's not
no big deal, huh?
Not really. I mean, that's when you grow up that way. It's like, well, that's not really a big deal. That's what we do that shit every day. I'm always watching these people and they're sitting there all awestruck looking at something. I'm like, it's just a pond. And there's an old duck in it. Is it good to eat? Let's eat that fucker. And then you won't have to look at it no more.
Oh, man.
That's hilarious.
How long did it take to get up to Canada? Do you know how long it took them guys to get up here?
Well, if I hear the stories right from the old folks, the first trip up took about 3 years because he would go and, you get close to winter, you got to make camp, so you just build a little shithole cabin and trap all winter and then wander on next year.
And that was pretty normal back then.
Pretty normal for everybody. I don't know anybody. That's what you did. You didn't go until it was already freezing cold and you were starving, Pilgrim. You fixed yourself up before it got that way, and then you spent the winter and you quit early, in other words.
That's
when
fun.
he got his furs, what, do you build a sled to pull them out, or
When
you'd have to find some place that wanted to buy them?
The Russians bought them. So they ended up. Most guys would go to the coast, So those are steep mountains, but they would end up, find a boat and head on down to Sitka or wherever and sell them, or they could go down there south of Anchorage. There was places, and they were up on the Tanana and the Kuskokwim too. The Russians were, so you could find they had little trading posts all over Alaska.
And so back then, people were using the rivers mostly to get around.
Everybody used the rivers. That's that's the super highway, winter or summer.
Yeah, with dog teams in the winter or boats or rafts, whatever.
Well, they really never had dog teams and shit till white people showed up, or they didn't have fish wheels or any of that crap until white people showed up. But
oh wow,
I'm actually related to everybody. After this many generations, I think there's a relative of mine in every city, town, and village in the state. I'm related to most of the Indians and Eskimos I know.
Wow.
I just lump Eskimos together because there's about 15 different versions of, Inuit and all of them down the coast. They're all different. So they're different family groups. So
yeah.
I'm related to most everybody that's like north of the Alaska Range. Not so much on the south end.
Yeah. Did you ever float any rivers or anything when you were a kid growing up, or North Pole Slough or anything like that?
Oh, heck, we used to. It's still fun. I mean, I didn't realize that we actually just knew how to do swift water stuff, but when we were kids, we'd just run up to Tanana and jump in the river and float down to home. That was just sit there. Well, we learned that if you just sit in the water like you're sitting in a chair with your arms out, you can zip down the river and you just steer a little bit and get out down by home.
And no life vests or anything?
Oh, no, yeah. We all knew how to swim. After you breathe in enough water, you learn how to swim. But that was always fun. We'd make firewood log rafts, my brother and I, and my cousins and shit. We'd make log rafts and float, throw them in the slough and float them home so we could get firewood. But my little brother probably don't remember that. He was kind of little. That was my job, to keep him from drowning. Yeah. I was kind of his protector in school because he had a little bit of a speech impediment, so he couldn't say certain letters. He would say them weird, so I tuned up a lot of people for him. They picked on him because I didn't like nobody picking on him.
Change their attitude a little bit?
Yeah, attitude adjustment.
Yeah.
I was kind of a bully, apparently. I didn't think I was, but...
And what school did you go to back then?
Well, honestly, I got kicked out of every one I ever went to. I did get a lot of 3-day vacations. I went to Salcha and Eielson Air Force Base, and then I went to Palmer and the schools in Palmer.
I wonder if you would have known our mom.
Oh, maybe. What was her name?
Lisa Ferguson?
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
Now it's Lisa File, obviously, but
Yeah, born about the same year you were.
Yeah, 1958.
Yeah, no, that name sounds real familiar.
She went to Eielson. That's where she graduated from.
I didn't graduate there because I got asked not to come back, but it was all right. I just, well, I'm semi-intelligent, and it would irritate me when they were trying to teach me shit I knew 10 years ago, before I even went to school probably. And I wanted to learn more, so they wouldn't let you go any faster than the slowest kid in the class. And I'd say, well, I'll help them. But they didn't want you to do that. So I went and got me a job and made more money than they did. Did school on my own.
So how long did you have your dad's car? Did you end up selling that and getting a different
vehicle? No,
vehicle?
actually, he ended up giving it to me. I kept that thing for a long time. It had a 389 in it, and it was a 63, I think. I don't know how old it was. I wasn't very old anyway, but I ended up rebuilding that, and I learned how to do automatic transmissions a lot because I used to think it was cool to do a reverse drop a lot. So you can do about 15 of them before you blow the transmission into smithereens. And then, of course, I had a 3-deuce manifold I found somewhere and put 3 2-barrels on that little 389, so it really ripped. When you get it into passing gear, all 3 of them would open up. Man, that thing would go. But if you do a reverse drop from 65 miles an hour, you can do about 13 of them in a row before you smoke the transmission. That's about max.
So you were rebuilding transmissions quite a bit.
Well, I didn't. Me and my brother figured out a system, although it irritated our sisters because we would borrow their beanbag chairs and we'd go tip them over on their side on the beanbag chair so it didn't dent it, and then we'd just pull the tranny out and put it back in. So we got our ass chewed because we were getting the girls' beanbag chairs dirty.
You could just buy them another one, maybe.
Yeah. Well, we thought, this is a pain in the ass laying under this car trying to get that transmission out. So, let's just tip it over and do it that way. So we just laid it up on its side on the beanbag chairs, and it actually worked pretty good. We could do a transmission in about 15 minutes.
Oh, man.
Yeah, they were fun.
So when did you get into trucking or...
Oh, my dad always drove truck. I knew all the old timers, that back from the early days of trucking because my dad was friends with them all. And I just loved trucks since I was like this big.
What was your dad's first name?
Bill.
Bill, okay.
Yeah, Bill Buzby.
Did you know him, Dad?
Who was the Buzby that lived next to Keith Harvey?
Oh, that's...
Was that the brother?
No, that's actually Keith Harvey. That's my cousin Joe Buzby. He worked for Alaskan, but that's his.
No, Joe.
But that was Elt.
Okay.
That's my grandpa's brother.
Okay.
But yeah, so that was.
And I know Keith had bought him a sawmill.
Yeah, no, he brought Elt. Elt was really good at sawing wood, so he was a whiz at that. Had a hell of a garden.
Had some good carrots.
Oh, he had the best strawberry patch you ever saw, man. He grew strawberries that were like that. They were so sweet. And their strawberries are like chickweeds, Once you get a couple of them strawberries, they just grow everywhere. You just take the rototiller out there and grind them up, and that makes them grow twice as much.
Really?
They're just amazing plant, but they like strawberries. And Uncle Elt thought he was some kind of a chiropractor, so he popped all our backs in all the time. He was a little rough, but he'd got him in.
How did your dad get into trucking?
Oh, he just liked it. He was we had guided, in the summer, and then we did sawmill and shit in the winter. And he was a really super, super good mechanic, my dad. Every time I ever got stuck on anything, I could call him up, and he'd always know the answer to it. But he just loved trucks, and he liked driving them. He had an old K5 International with a Hercules gas motor in it and a 4 and a 3. Huh. I remember that truck. Yeah, those old transmissions, they had a button on them because they were straight geared, and you could stick them in reverse going down the road forward. So they had a little lockout button. You had to pull the button up to get it in reverse because you could accidentally stick it in reverse while you were going down the road.
Oh, was he hauling logs with that?
Yeah, he had logs with it.
Huh.
Yeah, that's how he got started with that.
Where was he getting his logs at?
Actually, the same place the neighbor boys do them now. They're on an old island down on the backside of Flag Hill there we call it the wood lot.
Oh yeah.
We used to get logs there and up the Salcher River, and when we did the logs like up the river there, they always put big log raft out and make them float them down. Then you put a boom out and catch them.
Yeah.
I was one of the first jobs I had when I was a little kid was to everybody, you had a mill pond, so you clean your wood because it cuts better wet, and then you shake it gets all the gravel out of anything, and that was your job when you were little, is to run out there and spin the logs and wash them before you poke them up on the green. I got wet a lot. I had pretty good balance, though. After a while, I got pretty good at spinning logs.
So do you use cork boots?
Oh, no, shit. We were just regular. No, I hated tennis shoes. I don't even think they had tennis shoes. They might have had those Converse. I think that was the only kind of shoe they had. Because I remember the gym floors in the gyms back then were hardwood floors made out of like little 1.5-inch strips of hardwood. And those janitors were so fussy. If you got their floor dirty, your ass was grass, man. And you either had to go barefoot or a white shoe that didn't make a scuff mark on their gym floor.
Yeah.
Mostly I went barefoot because I really didn't like tennis shoes.
Wow.
I've always liked boots all my life. I've had boots.
Well, them boots must have been kind of slick on them logs.
Oh, they were. Yeah, no, I said I got wet more times than I can even think about because I'd spin myself right off the log and boom, bang, hit your chin on the way down. Then you're buried under the logs in the water. You learn how to swim pretty good. Got to push shit aside. You always had a pike pole, so we'd cut this little dry pecker pole out of spruce, about 12 feet long so you can balance. And you usually put a nail or something in the end and a hook so you could push or pull on your logs to scooch them over onto the green chain to pick them. They'd suck them up out of the water and put them up on the log deck for the mill.
How long would they wait to dry that wood before they started using it? Do they just throw it up, or they?
No, we just spin them and clean them, and then just start cutting it right then. Yeah.
Oh, but after you guys cut the wood into
we'd stack it and sticker it in bundles, and then and let it dry. Or if you could sell it green, or you could wait until it dried. Because that was all pretty much green wood. Yeah. And so it takes a couple of years for them to dry properly because you didn't have not like they do now with a kiln. They can dry it right away, but it still takes a month to dry them.
Well, people probably weren't letting it dry all the way for building it.
Oh no, everybody knew how to compensate. You just compensated when you built for the gaps you were going to get. With lumber. And sometimes you'd have to redo it.
Yeah, a lot of times they did not cut the windows in until they had sat for the wear.
Yep. Oh, really? They'd let it sit for a whole winter?
It'll like a natural log house, it'll settle almost 4 inches. So you have to leave a 4-inch gap at least on top of the window frame after you put the window in and just fill it full of insulation. And trust me, in about 3 years, it'll be sitting snug tight against that thing. It'll settle right on down. That's why you always drill your walls and put all thread through them so you can just keep sucking it down. Okay. And you don't, if you put nails or screws in it, you countersink them that far, because otherwise when the wood dries, it'll push the log above it out if they stick up too far. Oh. So then you got to get the Sawzall in there and go along and cut all the fuckers off, and then your wall's kind of loose, but you can drill it and put all thread in it and suck them up.
So would they still use nails with the all thread or just all thread?
No, you use a few spikes in there.
Okay, but you want to drive them down to.
You want to countersink them. We'd have actually, I still got one I made. For a big long punch, and I got a pair of vice grips welded to it so you don't whale your hand because somebody's up there with a 10-pound sledgehammer setting that nail in there for you. I was always the dummy that would hold the thing for the nails.
Yeah, we used to get rebar cut.
Yeah.
And countersink the rebar.
Yeah, the rebar works good. Yeah. Anything. You just need to keep it from moving around. Yeah. The corners are locked together, so it's not a big whoop. Yeah. But if you fit them all tight, then they stay tight as long as you do that.
So did KJ&P get all those logs from your guys' mill, or where did all those come from? Was that Dave's land?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, everything probably.
They probably got it from us or from Mr. Sewell after he bought it.
Okay.
Because he he ended up with that, all that land, like where the Sewells were back in there on that road, that was all belonged to the people that owned the KJMP. What was their name?
Don Nelson?
Yeah, Don Nelson. That was all his land at one time that I know of.
Well, Dave Ainley gave it to Don Nelson.
Yeah.
Dave Ainley.
Yeah.
And Dave had, 160 acres back in the day, around there?
Way more than that. He owned stuff clear to the refinery.
I was going to say, because our land, like on Wainwright, we had 720 acres there.
Wait, so you guys was Wainwright your family?
That was our homestead.
Oh, before the base.
Yeah, well, they took it from us in World War II. They decided that because we had all the fields and everything there, in the dairy and stuff, they decided that was where they wanted to put their airstrip because it had been cleared for 20 years and it was all dry and done frost even, and so they gave my great grandpa. They said he'd take $10 an acre for it, or he'd give it to him, one of the two. So he took the $10 an acre.
Well, what was property going for back then per acre?
Oh, it's probably even a cleared land like that was still more than $50 an acre.
Oh, so they got gypped pretty good.
Oh yeah, no, it was either we'll use eminent domain or you can take $10 an acre is what they gave him.
Were they using that for the dairy, or were they?
Well, that was
stuff?
the fields. That was for the fields for hay and everything. They.
Right there where the airstrip is now, right along the river.
No,
there,
if you ever see old pictures of Fairbanks, you'll see all these old float planes. Because if you ever go down the river back where the base is now, there's a really long straightaway on the Chena, and all the float planes landed there. Well, that was my grandpa's. He had a little dock there, and all the float planes tied up at his place.
Okay.
It's farther back than where the road is now, so it's like more where the airstrip is. But that was all. Yeah, that was all. Like if you ever see the picture of Wiley Post and Will Rogers sitting on the bank of the Chena in Fairbanks, that picture, that's at my great grandfather's place where his dock is.
Okay.
All the old timers that had float planes, Joe Crossan and all them guys, they all kept their planes there.
Wow.
Probably why I like airplanes, because I read about those guys, and I've met some of them when I was a kid because they were still alive,
Yeah, real pioneers back then.
Yeah, my grandpa, he got into flying. He used to hunt meat for this town when he was a kid up Wood River, and way up at the head of Wood River is the old meat hunting camp. But anyway, he was up there trapping with his friend, and he got something wrong with him, and my grandpa snowshoed in one night. He went from upper Wood River all the way to Fairbanks, breaking trail, snowshoeing ahead of his dogs, about 70-some miles, and then he got Joe Crossan to fly him back out, and they picked him up.
Wow.
And they did that he did that nonstop, and he said, yeah, he said, I was getting a little tired when I got into town.
He had his dog team and snowshoeing?
Well, he had break trail. So
okay.
So he snowshoed. It's about 72 miles, he figured.
So he's breaking trail with the snowshoes, then he's running the dogs up.
Yep.
Yeah.
They just follow him.
Yeah.
They didn't. And then he when he got back to town, he took a nap and then jumped on the dog sled and went back to camp. But that's when he started liking airplanes, so he learned how to fly, and he flew quite a bit.
Kind of necessity back then to know how to fly.
Well, yeah, he liked it running the dogs, but you get there faster in the plane.
Yeah.
But I rode on the sled with him lots. I mean, he had big sleds. We'd have 1,000 pounds on the sled, and then you got to ride on the G-pole up front there. Get run over by the dog sled a lot. But.
Was he the one that was going out to Livengood with the dog sled, or was that?
Oh no, that was back in the old. They would have what's the North American sled dog race now used to be called the Signal Corps race, and they would race from Fairbanks to Livengood and back. So you basically had to make your own trail. He won all the time. He won it so many times they retired the trophy.
It was called the Signal Corps. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
So they would run from Fairbanks to Livengood
and back.
And back, but that was just one time. They didn't do it 3 times.
No. Well, that's little more distance than the 3-day thingy they do here. But that actually after he retired the trophy, they changed the name to the North American and started running it around town.
And now it's like the Open North American now or whatever.
Yeah, they've changed the name 2 or 3 times.
Okay.
Trying to think which way they would go to go out to Livengood back then.
Oh, they had that's the dog sled trails, and they had several of them. They're more than one.
I wonder
But
if they'd follow the old
you could make
road.
your own trail in the race. It didn't matter how you got there. You just had to check in alive and good and come back.
Oh, wow.
So that's a lot of guys just made their own. Or
That'd be kind of cool to have that race going again.
they would think they could get Grandpa, but win him by they'd follow his trail because he's always out in front because he's a go-getting. Hell, I couldn't even. His till he's in his 70s before I could even keep up with him sheep hunting. He'd go right straight to the top of the mountain without stopping for a breath. He was a good sheep hunter.
And you guys had big freight sleds back then.
Yeah,
like 12-foot
that
sleds.
sled was they're 10-foot beds.
Yeah.
We'd carry 1,000-pound load, and then we only used like 5 or 6 dogs for that. That's all you need. You don't need those great big old teams for.
Yeah.
That's just kind of a waste.
Well, those dogs were bigger back then too, weren't they?
We never had fancy dogs. Grandpa got every derelict dog that came around because he was really good for teaching animals how to do things, and they always worked good for us.
Yeah.
He would go to the pound and get dogs.
Just throw them in, right?
Yeah, he trained them. He taught them good. They were easier to train when they were puppies. You start them as soon as they can walk. If you teach them how to mind, a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Teach them how gee and haw and stop. And I can remember we'd go trapping with dogs, and when we come up to a trap, we'd stop 200 yards away and get off the sled, and they'd sit right there.
Yeah.
We'd walk up there, take something out of a trap, and he'd whistle. He'd just whistle a couple times, and they'd walk right up. I seen old movies of him in the races. Most of these guys couldn't control their dogs, and Granddad's dogs would come up to the stop sign and just sit down. And he'd say, when it was time to go for the race start, he'd just say, "Okay, let's go," and everybody stand up and trot out of town. And he'd be 2 hours ahead of everybody when they came back.
Really?
Yeah, they even ran the race by right by his house one time, thinking his dogs would pull into his dog yard, and his team just drove right on by home because they knew how to mind, and everybody else's dogs turned into his dog yard. He said he came in like four hours ahead of everybody on that one.
Man. So I wonder if the trail used to just kind of follow where the Elliott goes now. Or do you think it just kind of stayed low?
No, it's a little different because it didn't go up over all the hills like that. These guys now, they build all these roads. They go up every dang hill in the country when you can stay in the valley almost all the way to Livengood. You can stay in the valley all the way to the Yukon River. I mean, you don't have to go up all those hills. It's like the Hall Road. It went up all the hills on purpose because they needed a road to access the pipeline, and they put the pipeline up over all the hills to control the flow of the oil.
Oh, that's why they did that.
So basically, it was just access. I mean, you can leave the Yukon River and hardly go up anything more than a foothill all the way to Anatuvik Pass without going over a hill.
Yeah, but they didn't want the pipeline coming through Anatuvik.
No, they didn't, but it was the best way to go. That's where the old ice road went.
Yeah.
Anatuvik is a great pass because you start at like Bettles and you climb all the way to the height of Vatican Pass, but it takes you 40 miles. So it's just a real shallow.
A little harder to spin out over there.
Yeah, pretty hard to spin out.
Yeah.
And you went up there as a kid with your dad, didn't you?
Yeah, I did one trip up there with my dad. It was a 2-week trip. The road used to go up, and you come out on the north slope, and you angle back and come to Galbraith Lake because they built a big airstrip there, and where it is now. And then they would fly. The Hercs would fly in there and fly the shit up to where Prudhoe was because there wasn't a trail up to Prudhoe yet.
Wonder why they never put a trail up there then.
I don't know. It's all swamps and tundra.
Huh.
So you were on the cat trains then?
Yeah.
So what was that like?
Oh, you only went as fast as the cat. Every truck would had a trailer, and then they would pull a sled on runners behind the truck. So everybody was pulling two. And then the cats were pulling sleds. So you only went the speed of the cat, and you pulled camp with you, so you had a cook camp and places to sleep because And most of the trucks back then, unless you had a cab over, you didn't have a bed.
Yeah. How many dozers did they have back then?
Oh, there was at least one or two for every truck. Yeah,
oh, okay.
It was a big project. It wouldn't just, when everybody would leave town, it would look like that picture right there, where there's just it lined up as far as you can see, and you had to babysit with everybody because somebody, 5 guys might get across the river, and then the next one falls through the ice, and then you spend half the day digging everybody out and getting everybody crossing. that kind of shit. That's how it went.
So it was slow then.
2 weeks for a one-way trip to Galbraith Lake from town.
From Fairbanks.
Yeah.
Man, so was that fun?
That was awesome. And, I mean, I'm a kid, and I'm like, they figured out even though you're a little kid, you can drive a cat. So guess what? You get to drive a cat. That was even funner.
So what year would you have that dozer in? Be first or second? Or
No, it depended on how much load you had on there. Second gear was the most common. Third gear, if you could get it in there without breaking something.
And what size cats are we talking here?
Oh, they were all the D7, like the 3Ts, and the D8s were the most popular. And they had newer cats too. I mean, we had D7Es, and there was lots of D6s. The B model was pretty popular. They didn't have the C out yet, I don't think. No, they didn't have them out. Yeah, they did. They were brand new. They still had a clutch in them, though. They hadn't got around to putting power stiffs in them yet.
Yeah, and it'd get pretty cold back then.
Oh, hell yeah. It was 50 below, 60 below.
So they had hydraulic controls or cable?
Most of them were hydraulic, still some cable. I like cable cats. I still own a couple. I like cable dozers. I got an old 2U in my house. That's my yard cat. D8.
So with those, you can't do any down pressure with the cable.
No, but it don't matter. You
Yeah.
can, I mean, that just teaches you how not to get stuck on high centered.
Yeah.
I mean, because they dig in good. If all you had to do is, we would take the side arms, the top ones, off the blade, and then you make them about 4 inches longer and tip the blade forward, and then they really dig in. So you can actually, you watch your cable over the top, and you can see it get tight, and then it stretches. Cable stretches, so you got to keep picking it up, because as the blade loads up, it keeps wanting to dig in because it's loading up with material. So, but you can watch it right across the top there, and keep your cable tight. And though the old timers would give you shit if you didn't keep that cable tight, because then you're going to wad it up on the drum.
Oh, okay.
And then they'd get bent at you. You
that
little
happen?
bastard, get off that cat. You can't do it right. My dad would tell me, if you can't make it smooth going ahead, he hated seeing anybody backblade anything. If you can't make it smooth going ahead, get the shit off of that thing. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I went to Taktovik.
Oh, yeah.
And then
Barter Island.
8 days, cable bladed, to upgrade the runway. Well, we got there, I don't know, November, cold. Well, you're not going to cut that gravel pile down.
No, you couldn't cut it down if it was a hydraulic blade.
So I was out there, and they said, do you know how to do electrical work? So I fixed the lights on the runway. That had all been shot out because people were target practicing on the lights.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Katovik is the native side of town, and Barter Island is the white boy side of town up there, because they had the old dew line shit was in there. Yeah.
Yeah, they had those big fuel bladders. Native kids come up there as like a trampoline, jump up and down the fuel bladder.
I liked it when we were young, and we'd go out to places with the truck on the ice road, and you'd be like over to Nutsack there, or excuse me, Newitzik. And you pull into town, and everybody's happy to see you, but the kids, they'd be standing all over your truck. You'd have 10 kids hanging off there, so finally you'd open the door and throw them all in there until they were packed in there so fucking tight you couldn't hardly move. And I always kept a sack full of suckers for all the kids, and they'd leave everything alone. We'd drive up and down the street a couple of times, and everybody's happy, and away you go on down the trail.
That's funny. I remember Dave Inslee telling a story about going through Anatuvik, and he'd given some kids some apples or something like that. And then, I don't know, 20, 30 years later, somebody was broke down out there on the Hall Road, and it was that same kid.
They remember. They don't forget.
It's like that kid remembered Dave all them
Oh,
years
yeah.
later.
No, they were nice people. They're good people. I don't care what anybody says. I like them.
Yeah.
And they're, they're just not used to having strangers around, and in those days, and so it was exciting. It was like a frickin' adventure, and why would you disappoint kids like that? So you don't. You let them honk the horn, even though they're driving you batshit crazy, driving around honking the horn and climbing around in your sleeper and everything else. But that was fun.
Would you stop in Anatuvik or Bettles or anything like that when you went through there, or
we stopped. They stopped there at Bettles for a little while, and Anatuvik more. it was nice. They always carried supplies too for those guys to drop them off on the way. Otherwise, it was a very expensive airplane ride for all their shit. So they always had a little bit extra stuck on there, contraband, bribes, whatever. Little booze, little food, little whatever, get everybody happy.
Yeah, it's probably exciting for them guys to see them trucks come through there. And
Oh yeah, well it was fun. It's just like it's probably like us going to see the big city lights in Vegas or something for the first time. It's like, whoa, look at all this cool shit.
Yeah, my sister, you know what Anatuvik stands for?
No.
What it means?
No, not really.
Caribou crap.
Okay, I knew it was caribou something, but I couldn't remember what.
And what happened, the droppings, since they hang out there so much, it's thick.
Well, that's why they call it that.
Yeah.
They liked the Anatuvik was the main thoroughfare from one side of the brooks to the other for a lot of critters. The other ones, there's 4 or 5 passes up and down the mountain range there, but they're all really high and steep. So that was a good crossing because it's a big wide valley, just huge valley.
Yeah, if they get swayed away from their migration, then they'd come up towards Adigan.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen them going over Adigan before. They come over pretty thick.
One native would tell me, when they come to the river, there's a river out there, and they're hunting, if they go out there and they start shooting them before the main front runners get across, it changes the migration.
Yep. You always waited until any time you were doing that kind of stuff, you wait until they cross the river.
Yeah. And then they'd go out there with their boat, shoot them in the water, drag them to the bank, and then they take care of them there.
There's always the young ones that think, let's see if we can get a rope on that fucker out in the middle of the water. They do that too. Then they learn a little lesson about how strong a little tiny caribou can be.
Yeah.
oh man,
What did you guys use to keep those? Were they shacks you guys were pulling behind those cat
We
trains?
had everything had oil drip stoves in
Oil
them.
drip stove?
Yeah,
Okay.
they all had a barrel ticking on the front. That was somebody had to keep them full all the time.
And you guys had a chef cooking the food.
Yeah,
and all that.
and boy, if you were the unlucky soul that had to pull the cook shack with a couple of the sleeper camps on there, you got to keep the cook steady because you would get a lot of mystery food if you didn't, because he's trying to cook in there while you're dragging him along, because he's got to make lunch for everybody to stop at lunchtime, and then he starts right away as soon as that's over, and he starts on dinner. So he's got dinner ready when everybody gets off, and everybody would rotate in through the cook shack.
So he's cooking while this whole thing's moving across the ground and everything.
He could take a lot of that, but if you were doing something stupid, he would get. I'd watch you. The door would come open and he'd stick his fucking head out and shake his stick at somebody. Hey, you're not getting dinner tonight.
It's lucky back then he wasn't shooting at you. It's like he calmed down up there.
Yeah, those old cooks were tough as nails, man. Those were some tough son of a bitches. Every one of them, the World War II vet, and they were combat cooks. I mean, them guys were tough and they didn't take no shit. They made good food though, and they were rough and ready. But boy, they'd do anything for you. But don't mess with them.
So how long it takes you 2 weeks to get to Galbraith? How long would it take you to get back? I mean, was it that
It
slow?
wasn't much faster coming home. I mean, you had a broke trail. If you got right after it coming home, you could catch most of your trail while it was still broke.
So that you still brought the dozers back with you?
Oh yeah, everything came back and forth every time. Yeah.
Did you guys stick to the same kind of path too?
Oh yeah, same trail. You can still see it if you fly. It went right kind of north right out of Livengood. It didn't go the way the haul road goes, but it went up and then crossed the Yukon and went right to Fort Hamlin. There's an old army fort there. You see them Fort Hamlin hills and all that shit. There's a army fort over there.
Oh, that's why
That
it's
was
called
back
Fort Hamlin.
from back in the 1800s.
Really?
Oh yeah, and there's another one that was up this Good Pasture River. There's an old fort about a mile and a half downstream from the Pogo mine. There's an old army fort that was on the old. They called it the Valdez to what the hell is the name of that? Eagle Trail. It was the Valdez to Eagle Trail.
Oh, and it'd go clear to Eagle?
Yeah, that trail. So that they stayed in the high country and along them hills like that, and then went over into the top of the Charlie, and then right over into Eagle. So it's like half the distance is the way the road goes.
Okay.
So out of Fairbanks, that would come that way, and then out of Delta, the one that came from Valdez would go that way, and then they had another Valdez to Eagle Trail that went up through the Toke Cutoff and over that way.
So you could probably still find
Oh, you
the
can
old
still see
forts back
Yeah,
there.
you can still see them. I've been in that one down there below the Pogo River. And
So what is this log building? they put
yeah, no,
together?
it's just like an old Army fort. I mean, they've fallen down, most of
Was
them.
it Army?
Yeah, it was the
Like
U.S.
walls?
Army. Yeah,
Okay.
U.S. Army.
So how far away
Washington, there.
from Sand Hill would that Fort Hamlin be? Right.
Well, you could, if you knew where to look, you could almost see it, but it's probably 25 to 30 miles away.
Is it east or west?
No, it'd be
of-
towards the east,
Okay.
back towards like the Yukon, but upstream.
Okay.
It's quite a ways upstream from where the haul road crossed. We crossed about a half a mile above where the bridge is on the old ice road, and it's just a flat crossing there. So we ice in the winter and then hovercraft in the summer.
Yeah. We're gonna take a break real quick. Use the bathroom if you want, and we'll continue on in a second.
Cool.
Here.
Thanks.
Bob.
Sitting there waiting. Yeah.
It's such a good.
You know, the Aleutians are an awesome place. I've been there, and they're, you know, my great uncle Tex got shipwrecked out there on one of them islands, and he was there for 3 fucking years
Oh, wow.
by himself for 2. He had one other guy that survived, and Tex said he just kind of died he gave up, you know, so he died from it. But Tex was there 2 more
he
years.
did die there?
The one guy did. My uncle didn't.
Okay.
He made it out. He was there 3 years, and at one time a ship pulled up there to come in and send a little boat in to get fresh water, and that's how he got picked up. But he was out there for 3 years on that island with 2 of them by himself, and I'll tell you what, it's no trees or nothing, and the wind blows constantly. That son of a bitch that old guy could catch a fish with anything. Because
really?
He ate fish and mice and occasional fox and
Where was this at?
I don't know the name of the little island, but it's way out on the Aleutian chain. He was shipwrecked out there.
Who was shipwrecked?
It was my uncle Tex Wheaton.
Okay.
Actually, there's a book. His wife wrote a book about his story, but he was 3 years out there. He was an old Signal Corps guy. He came up here as a radio man, you know, and he was shipwrecked out there, and 3 years. And him and one other guy survived the boat sinking, and the other guy lasted about a year. But my Uncle Tex said he just gave up because he didn't think anybody would ever come, and he just kind of died from giving up.
Well, Barren Island.
Barren Island. There's no
That
trees,
would be
no
rough.
nothing.
Oh,
And it's
wow.
just I mean, it's a big island, and it's covered with grass and shit, and it's got lots of, you know, things to eat, but you got to catch them all. And
They probably didn't have a gun or anything either.
no,
huh?
no, nothing. He knew how to build a fire, though. He figured out a fire, but I mean, you're living out in the open. He was there 3 years. Tough old bastard.
Oh man.
He was funny. I mean, the guys that survive stuff like that are so cool because they're a total different attitude. You know, they're happy to be here, and they're very intelligent, and they you know, they got a sense of humor that they probably walk around talking to themselves about how stupid they are doing this shit when it's happening. You know, but it carries over into the rest of their life. They're just awesome people.
Yeah.
I mean, they really truly are.
Well, that's like Dad's uncle that was in the Native Scouts, whatever, during World War
We
II.
were talking about that.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, Alaska Scouts, Kastner. Cutthroat. He
Kastner.
knows all about them.
Yeah, they're cool. They were cool dudes.
But I never met him, but he lived out there west of Willow or something out there.
Yeah.
Uncle Bud, right?
Yeah, he lived, he most of his life he lived in Petersburg. Then they got separated, and then he come to somewhere around, where you say south, Salton, or somewhere south out in the wilderness.
It was up there by Willow or something like that, way out there
Well, that
west, out
was-
in the middle of nowhere.
Even when I was a kid, Wasilla had like 25 people living in it. Because my mom's grandparents lived in Wasilla. They were homesteaders around there.
Huh.
In fact, my grandpa David had like 30 dozers, and that's what he did for a living. And his dozers were all the ones that built the road from Sutton to Sheep Mountain.
Oh, wow.
And that through there, they took them. That's what he did. The original road.
That would have been a job.
Yeah.
What was his name?
David Bryant.
Okay. And that was your relative?
That's my mom's dad. Yeah.
Okay.
My grandpa David. He was a funny guy. I just loved him. He was awesome.
So it sounds like your whole family was making this state, building the state.
Yeah, he would let me run a D8 cat when I was little, help him clear land, and he would just hoot. He taught me so much how to clear land, big trees with big dozers. It's fun. It's a lot of work, but I mean, those big old trees like down in the valley there in Palmer, I mean, even with a D8, you do them one at a time, and that's all you can do. And the roots, when they come up, are 30 feet in diameter. And, I mean, you get one of them big old cottonwood trees tipped over, and it makes that old D8 blow smoke.
Oh, man.
just a smoking. It's working its guts out. My grandpa really liked Alice Chalmers dozers, so he had a lot of them. But so him and my dad, they argued. My dad was married to one of his daughters. And
could you pull that microphone just a little closer to you?
Yep. There we go.
There we go.
Yeah, that was he was so funny. Him and Grandma Bryant, she was funny. He hated bologna, period. I think that was a carryover from the war. He hated bologna with a passion. And whenever Grandma was mad at him, he got bologna sandwiches in his lunch. And he'd open that lunch up and he'd say, "God dang, horse cock sandwich again." And then he'd say, "Shut that cat off. We're going to town for lunch." Oh, God, that would crack me up when I was a little kid. I mean, stuff like that. You never think about your big people like that when you're a little kid, My Uncle Ted, he'd be out to camp at my grandpa's for hunting season, and we'd be walking up the trail, and he's got his walking stick, and we were looking for mushrooms, and he'd be singing. All them guys knew little ditties and poems by heart. They could recite books of poetry by heart, And he'd be walking along. "I use my prick for a walking stick." When you're this big, that is the coolest thing in the wide world. He'd be reciting this little ditty that take like 30 minutes to say it, a dirty ditty, how them Scottish are, But boy, that was so neat. You're sitting there just shit-eating grin on your face listening. And then sometime he'd say, hey, don't tell Grandma we'd say those things. I won't.
Oh, man.
Yeah, the talk around when Grandma was in the room was considerably different than when all the old guys and the kids were in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So were you helping out on the pipeline at all when that was going on? Or
I worked on all of it. I went north my first trip, paid working for somebody beside my dad in 1974. I still remember my first trip. I was scared shitless. I drove to Livengood with a load of fuel. And that was on the old road. And remember the old road. If you had a very good day, you made it to Livengood in under 6 hours, maybe.
And that was wintertime, summertime?
Summertime. Summertime was worse than the wintertime because that old mud would get wet. You could put two sets of three railers on, and then you're probably going to have to put two more sets over top of the other ones because it would clog up with mud. You couldn't steer. You couldn't get up the hill. You couldn't get down the goddamn hill. You couldn't get around the stupid corner.
And it was narrower, too, back
there.
yeah,
it was only about 14 feet wide. You couldn't meet anybody. You had to backed up. Yeah, it's a lane and a half, and the road had a big crown in it, and only 1 in 10 trucks had a radio, and there was a lot of backing up done. And you hated meeting anybody on Livengood Hill because there's like 2 really sharp switchbacks and a couple of tight corners. And if you met somebody there, one of you is going to back up to somewhere.
Dropping off the north side by Pump 7 where you come around.
Yeah. Oh, that would scare me in the wintertime. That road was like this fucking wide. And it leaned to the outside. And there was no guardrail, and you had a little, what's that creek at the bottom? It had a little one lane. Yeah, one lane overhead bridge that just barely fit a truck.
Still there. I told them they need to go up there and take a picture.
Yeah, it's still there. And we'd come down off that in the wintertime. I scared me to death because it get glacier on it, and you're side hilling like this on that son of a bitch, and it's like, holy fuck, you know. And you got to keep grabbing gear so you don't fall off the road, and then try to make that stupid corner onto the bridge. That's how we went.
So would you guys have a drag chain on the trailers too?
Well,
or?
sometimes, yeah. Sometimes you had to put a drag chain on just to keep it in line.
Yeah, if you got 28 mile, usually if any moisture, even dew on that road, would be slick.
Oh man.
Yeah, on that.
Well, and you've seen some of the, driving up to 28 mile, if you see those little pull-offs around the corners, and that's the road. That was the little sharp corners, that was the road.
Oh, okay. And so they just left.
And it looked like that all the way to Live and Good, and then all the way to Manly, and that way, and yeah.
Yeah, Olness, the gravel started.
Yeah.
The dirt and gravel.
Dirt and gravel, yeah. Those hills were all steep, too. They weren't just little hills. Before you got to Mule Skinners there, that coming down off of that hill, that was a windy, twisty son of a bitch, and it had a 180-degree switchback almost in the middle of that stupid thing.
Yeah.
And you couldn't get whooping because it'd go down and it got really steep, and then it would kind of turn really sharp to the right and down around the corner, and you needed the whole frickin' road to make that corner. I mean, there was no meeting anybody there.
But why was that called Mule Skinners?
Well, because what's his name? The boys Merriman's. Her dad homesteaded there, and they had a little place, and they fed anybody that come by on the road. I mean, and fixed tires. The boys, the Merriman boys that you guys know, when they were this big, they were out there fixing truck tires alongside the road right there.
Yeah. And
that's how they got invited to work, because they were good workers. They weren't shirkers at all. They were busting ass out there.
And see, you probably know it, but I was telling these guys in the early days, they wanted to get more communication out.
Yeah.
So they had Ridge
Runner and Mule Skinner and all them guys. They all had big radios.
Jack Strick.
Yeah.
But the name Mule Skinner. Why the name?
I don't know. 'Cause he was an old mule skinner, I would guess.
No, she was.
She was.
What?
They said she was so ornery.
His wife or what?
She was so. Howard's mom.
Oh, okay.
Howard's mom, yeah.
She was so ornery that they said she could skin a mule.
Yeah.
And so they started.
I never knew the whole story, but yeah.
So that's why they've been calling that.
And
so everybody called it Mule Skinner's place.
Yeah. So they had the CB radios, plus they had Radio Fairbanks.
Radios.
Yeah. And they were given those radios. They never had to pay for them as long as they lived.
Yeah.
So Mule Skinners had one. Jack Strick from Manly had one. And Ridge Runner had one. There was 3 of them.
Was that before people started getting CBs, or was that
before the CBs?
Yeah, before CBs. Them guys all had, and they had them fixed up, their CBs, so they could talk a long ways. They had big base stations, and they'd 500-watt boosters on those things. They could get out.
I can remember Frontier. You remember John Bevins?
Oh yeah, Big John. He's always
you
like.
could hear him in Prudhoe. He'd get on that CB, and you could hear him down there on the dome.
His old whiskey gravelly voice. What you doing, son? That's how he talks,
And that thing, I don't know how many watts they had.
You could hear that for miles, huh?
Oh, for Prudhoe,
yeah.
Really?
And the North Slope is amazing for skip. You could be up there on top of 117, and you could talk to people in Oregon like they were sitting right beside you. And I even talked to somebody that was in Australia once, and I didn't believe it, and they didn't believe it, so we sent each other a stupid letter just to prove it that we actually talked to each other, because he didn't believe it and I didn't either. So I gave him my address, so he gave me his, and we exchanged letters, and turned out I was talking to somebody in Australia.
Wow. I used to come into Coldfoot there by the shop, and I could park beside that shop, and I only had 5 watts on my CB. And I talked to people on the Mississippi River. Any place there was a river, the ground plane's so good, I'd talk to them all over.
I had a cool little item I got. I don't remember who I bought it from, but it's a 250 or 500 watt booster for a CB for a truck. And you definitely needed to use steel antennas when you use that thing. But it was it would get out. But if you keyed up the mic, nobody else could talk. I mean, because you just boomed right over top of everybody.
melt them down if you're close, right next to them.
Yeah. Everybody says, oh, it melts them down. It really, literally does. You couldn't use a fiberglass whip antenna. It would just smoke the antenna if you had those big boosters on there.
It's amazing how good the radios used to work back then.
CBs will work just as good as a VHF. You just have to tune them up right.
Yeah.
They really do. I mean, the problem with them is the way the signal works on them is they just keep bouncing.
Yeah.
You know, but the VHF does work better.
Well, it's like that Western Star, that metal cab on it. It's like better ground plane. These
Oh, it's an
plastic
awesome
trucks
ground.
make it a lot tougher.
Yeah.
We were coming in one day when I was working for John, and Leonard Kruger had that old, used to work for that guy out of Delta, but he really worked for John, had that blue Peterbilt with a 400-watt linear. We're coming down the road, and all of a sudden this guy said, hey, how about them guys on the haul road? Well, Leonard had a 400-watt booster. I said, go for it, Leonard. Talk to that dude. Leonard started talking. The guy said, no, the other guy. And I had 5 watts. Leonard was 400 times 5.
That was with your Western Star?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they were steel. Them Western Stars were so freaking tough. I can't think of. I know you know who I mean, but this one of our guys that we know, he was passing the blade north of the pass, and he was windrowing, and he was a little bit off center, and he went to pass him, and he got down there, and the truck flipped over and went skidding down the road on the lid of his truck. And he had a load of pipe on or something. I can't remember, but we were all so impressed with that Western Star because you could. Even after they tipped it up, you could still open and shut the frickin' door. And it skidded down the edge of the ditch on its cab because they had such a tough frame on that. The doors weighed, 200, 300 pounds?
Yeah,
God, they were
300 pounds.
horrible.
They were heavy. If you had to adjust the door by yourself,
It was pretty
you
hard.
strained. And I've done it before, but I had to use 2x4s.
Yeah, those things were a tough frickin' truck.
And they shut like a Cadillac. Just click.
Click. Yeah. They were tight cab, though. You did have to crack the window a little bit if you wanted it to get tight on a short pull. But
So you were working on the pipeline too, helping out, or
oh, I drove on the pipeline, but I never did any camp work, no. But I mean, we all pretty much lived in camps because they had a camp all over the place, and everything was free. We had free fuel for the trucks, free food, free everything.
Yeah, we had free fuel on Prudhoe Bay for quite a while.
Yeah, that was way into the 80s.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden they
Started
quit
charging.
because the refinery, they shut the refinery down. And so just for the people in Prudhoe.
was that after you guys were doing Philco Oil and Gas?
About that time, it's when Aurora Fuel went in and
Oh, so the refinery went in after you guys?
No, before.
Before.
I mean, the one in North Pole.
What about the one in Prudhoe Bay? Didn't they shut that down, and that's why you guys started hauling fuel?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Aurora actually was probably running a year before us.
Okay.
And they run, 25 trucks. And I think what John had there 9 or 10.
So you've flown helicopters before. When did you start doing that?
Oh, shoot. Back when I was in my 20s, I even did some slinging. I got probably 2,500 hours in helicopters. Mostly with my head stuck out the door slinging cord drills. Anybody that don't think that's frickin' work, try doing this shit. Leaned out the door for 8 hours a goddamn day with hanging on the end of your long line there, and people are trying to put bolts in the holes while you're trying to hold it still there.
Yeah, we had helicopters when I was hauling the drill rigs. I was hauling the stuff with my truck, but we had helicopters come in to set these.
Yeah, I've unloaded off of trucks before with a helicopter.
I've been loaded a few times there at Happy Valley and Galbraith, and they're cleaning up all that contaminated dirt there at them towers up there, and they'd fly that, and it's like, man, that is impressive to load a truck with a helicopter like that.
It's fun to fly. I like flying. It's almost like first time I ever had a job flying on floats, I'm like, I can't believe they pay me to do this shit. I get paid to take people fishing. That's just cool.
Oh, man.
So did you guys know each other back in those days?
Who's that?
You and my dad.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Shit, yeah. Actually, I was just going to say, me and one of Philco's trucks came in contact in the corner one time, and it ripped my fender and my air cleaner.
Oh, that
and my
was
stack
you?
off.
Well,
Yeah.
oh, was that Uncle Sean Pearson?
Yeah, that was Sean.
I thought-
we were both in the corner, and I was driving John Moore's truck. I just borrowed his truck to take a trip, and we just didn't fit. And I had a tanker, and I was not going to scoot over anymore because I would have tipped over.
Where was that at?
It's right,
35. Or
yeah,
somewhere
up there
there.
past where Chucky's Corner is somewhere, but. You know,
It
and
was narrow.
We
Narrow road.
missed really. The only thing that caught was the very last of the trailer. There was one winch welded on the end of the trailer, stuck it out this way, and it just went down there. And he got my air cleaner and the stack and the chain rack.
Oh man! So he knew he hit you, obviously.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
no,
yeah,
yeah, we
definitely.
stopped and we chatted, but I didn't have an air cleaner, so that's when we discovered that a 3-pound coffee can exactly fits in that tube.
Really?
So we stuck it in the hole and clamped it shut. So and boy, did it cut the power down on that 3408 having one air cleaner from two. You wouldn't think there was that. It was a big difference.
Really?
Oh man, I had all the way to Prudhoe to go yet, you know.
A gear lower or something like
Oh,
that?
yeah. It was noticeable, very noticeable having one less air cleaner.
Yeah, I forgot you were driving that night. I thought John was driving.
No, it was me.
Yeah, that's right.
I had my wife was in the sleeper. I'm like, holy fuck, I can't get over anymore because I am not going to tip this tanker over. And I was like, oh, we almost made it. And then, oh shit, we didn't make it.
Oh, yeah, that road, even in the corner,
It was skinny.
was narrow.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, they got a super freeway nowadays, you know, and guys are still running off the road.
No, it was tight. I mean, we were both doing this, you know. Sean was on the outside, so he was kind of, you know, maybe you could have got over a little, but you didn't know because that edges are soft, so you don't want to get over too far, you know, and he was doing the same thing as me, like, holy fuck.
He said he got to fix that truck too, huh?
Yeah, he did. He fixed it. It wasn't that big a fix. It was just, I mean, it fucked the stack up and the air cleaner, but of course, then you had to paint it. I guess I think he painted it a little bit to match.
I
it
think
up.
so.
Yeah, he painted the air cleaner. I think he just found an old air cleaner that was the same and fixed it up because it just fucked up the air cleaner.
Do you remember meeting my dad?
Oh, I don't remember where we ever met, but
You guys just kind of knew each
yeah,
other.
we just kind of knew each other and met. I mean,
I remember you driving a lot for John Moore.
Yeah, I drove. Well, because I was the third employee ever, owner-operator employee ever hired at Alaska West. I worked there for a long time. So the driver had seniority. So when I was going to get rid of my old ratty-ass truck, John talked me into taking one of his trucks. So I took one of his trucks and was driving it at Alaska West.
And then Dave Church.
Yeah, Dave Church
Was he in front of you or behind you?
No, Dave Church was behind me.
He was in front of me.
Yeah.
So that's probably where we.
Right, Last West.
Yeah, probably. Well, yeah.
Well, I would have been
Sourdough.
number 2 in Fairbanks, and then they had the strike at Chevron, so they asked me and one of the other guys, if we would go to Anchorage and haul fuel with, so we did that, and then I ended up staying down there for 2 or 3 years, and then I got to be the number 2 driver behind Jay Brown down there. And
Brown?
you remember Jay, the old black guy had the long nosed Pete with the V12 in it? Really
that.
super nice guy, Vietnam vet. I actually ended up, he had a double wide trailer at his house on his property out on O'Malley, and I ended up renting that trailer from him. But I stayed there about 3 years working for Alaska West down there.
So you'd work down in Anchorage for Alaska West. Would you still drive the haul road at that time when you were living in Anchorage? Okay.
And then I had a few altercations with an individual in the office, but it was a classic reason why dispatchers shouldn't own their own truck, because his truck was making 4 trips to my one.
Yeah.
And he's not even supposed to be on the board, and because they had a specific job for his driver and his truck. His driver's a friend of mine, but that truck made 1 trip a week from Nikiski all the way to Prudhoe, hauling Reformate. So you had to add that stuff to the old
Yeah, most people don't even know what that is.
Yeah, the gas was, the fuel was so crappy they had to put that shit in it to make it actually
Low octane. So they put the reformate in it. They took a load of reformate up there and mixed it.
Yeah. So once a week he could go from Kenai to Prudhoe with that.
And they'd mix it in Prudhoe Bay for the fuel
for the fuel. They all had cracking plants. Half the pump stations they could make their own diesel fuel, but then up there, I don't know what their problem was, but the shit they were making was not diesel. You might have to use a stick of dynamite to get it to burn. But they had to put reformate in it to make it work good,
Yeah. Did you ever buy any dynamite when you were a kid to blow up stumps or anything like that? Or?
Oh, yeah, we blew up a lot of shit. It was like, I'm just as bad now with tannerite. My nephews got me into that. This is cool. We stick a little in a barrel and shoot it with a 30-06, and the barrel goes 300 feet in the air. Hey, that's pretty neat. No, we would do that, but the dynamite's not. It's a little more stable, so we would put a cap on it. My brother and I, and we would bury it half in the ground in the gravel pit and shoot it. Boom. Hit the cap. You got to hit the cap.
Yeah.
Make a big bang. Dad'd say, "What are you little bastards doing out there?" Nothing, Dad. Nothing. We're target practicing. Yeah.
So did you ever have any fun time spinning out or making it up?
Oh, yeah.
5 mile? Or
everybody's
2.5?
got their hill that has caused them issues.
What was your hill?
Sand Hill and me did not get along. I spun out on that son of a bitch more times than I can stick. And everybody seems to have one little hill that just gives them grief, and that was mine. I don't know why. I spun out on, I pulled up to Mackey one night and somebody spun out, so they chained up, and so everybody were, stopping, chaining up. Well, far be it from us to be the idiot that plugs up the road, so everybody stopped and chain up. And we'd all go up there and can't spin out, chain on, put 2 sets on, can't get going, back down the hill, try it again, can't get going. Didn't even make it up as far as that time. After about the 4th time, I got pissed. I backed all the way down the hill, took all of my chains off, and drove right over the hill, never slipped a frickin' tire.
Really?
And I'm like, the original guy must have gotten somebody's skid marks coming off the hill and burned out. And so we're all chaining up like morons down there, and it was cold out. It was 30 below, so the chains don't bite this ice very good. And so none of us were making it with chains, and that's what we all did. We finally got bent and backed all the way down the hill, took our chains off, and everybody drove right over the hill, never even slipped a stupid wheel. And we spent hours there.
Did you guys have lockers then or no?
Some did, some didn't.
Okay.
When you spun out without lockers, there was no putting one set of chains on. You had to put all 4 on.
Yeah.
Because any wheel that didn't have a chain on it was the only one that would spin.
Yeah.
And you're like, what the?
And you probably put sets on top of sets too, huh?
Not on the ice, but I have in the mud quite a few times.
Yeah.
But yeah, chaining up is I don't know, people are funny about chaining up, but the ones I like are the new guys. They won't take their fenders off in the wintertime, and they chain up the back axles, and then they chew and spin all the way up the hill and fuck it up for everybody else. And you try to tell them, if you put them chains on the front axle, they'll take right off and go, and you won't make all that shit and tear up your tires. And, well, I don't want to get a rock on my truck. Well, it's a frickin' truck, dude. If it ain't getting any rocks or dirt on it, you ain't using it very hard.
When did you guys learn that, chaining up the front axle?
Well, it just works. It's because of it's how a rear end works, that you're a one-wheel drive on the back axle. And if you put the one power divider in, you're a one-wheel drive on the back and one wheel left on the front. And if you got lockers, then you're still 2 wheels back here and one on the front, And if you just put them on the front axle with a power divider in, the old ones we put Detroit lockers, so you put it in the back rear end and then just do the power divider in the front. That worked good. But the front wheels will grab hold because the weight's more on the front. And second reason is the front tires, when they're digging in, they're chewing up the ground, and the back one's got something to grab a hold of.
Yeah, breaking that ice up.
And they will boogie right up the hill. You do that. The ones that drive me nuts, because I'm a mechanic, also is the ones that I'm going to put a corner chain on. Well, there's the best way in the world to break your frickin' axle right there. You know, and I got friends that do that all the time, and they're like, they're always working on the rear ends. And I'm like, well, that's because you use the quarter chain shift. Yeah, it works, but it's going to fuck up your rear end.
They get by a little bit longer with 46s.
Yeah.
Back when we started, we had a lot of 38s.
38s, yep.
Then a 44 was a big one.
Yeah, that was SSHD, man. That was what everybody wanted.
Were they doing that back in the pipeline days, chaining up the rear axle or just throwing a corner chain and breaking
Oh,
axles?
yeah, they do all kinds of. Those guys back, some of them flatlanders from America, it was like amazing. I can put a set of 3-railers on when I'm in a hurry in about 3 minutes, and they're out there and they're laying them out on the ground trying to pull them up, or I've seen them jacking the truck up to get a set of chains on. I'm like, what in the hell are these guys doing? I felt sorry for them, and then they're, no chain racks, no backup lights, and then they got the chains in a sack under the sleeper, and I'm like, well, that's going to be wonderful when you spin out with no lockers and it's sliding down the hill backwards, chasing it down the hill, trying to get them out of the fucking sack and untangled and something under the tire to get it to stop moving. And
so you've slid down Sand Hill quite a bit, huh?
Yeah, not too far, a little ways. Yeah, I've spun out and slid down that a lot. And I've spun out a few times on the knob on this side of the hill. I spun out once on the other side, but that's because somebody spun out in front of me. The worst one I ever did was a friend of mine. I was kind of tailgating him. That's another thing you learn not to do. Don't be tailgating somebody when we're taking a run at the hill, because we went right up through the guardrail on the Koyukuk, and he spun out right at the top of the guardrail where it gets steep and you go to your pulling gear, and I ripped around him and I spun out right beside him. And we're right in the cut, blocking the road. And we're like, nobody's around to talk on the radio. And you never seen two old fucking bastards get out and try to get, and we couldn't get the chains on because we were like almost touching.
Oh, man.
So we're both, I said, you stay in your truck and keep hollering on the radio. Because I was on the outside, I'll get mine. I slid up under my truck and got a single on the inside fucking wheel on that side and 3-railer on the outside so we could get apart. And he kept talking, because, man, you know how people come off the Koyukuk there going south, and we're right there at the top of the guardrail, right where it gets steep. Old Dale Cartwright, that's who it was. You remember Dale?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, side by each, man. We didn't make it. We were perfect. And then I kind of went like this, and we're like this far apart. Right in the middle of the stupid Koyukuk.
I remember, I was telling a story about it. Remember on the shelf, we had a lot of rain that one year.
Oh, that one that we had the mud?
Oh, bad.
He ain't lying when he tells you if you didn't stick it in first gear at the bottom of the hill, you were not going to make it, because if you shifted, you left your drive line right there in the mud. It just stopped moving.
That's what Dale did, have that brand new truck. And it took that extra gear he needed, and he pulled like normal, which there's no way you're going to do it, because the suction on the trailer and the truck was too much. And he blew that drive line right in front of me. Yep. And so I got that truck at 38,000 pound rounds. And I thought, well, I had 2 sets on. So actually I put in second gear. And I was able to get up through the mud, deep, very deep.
People don't believe how the road used to be like going off the beaver slide. I've seen the mud so bad that you had to stick it in third gear and stick your foot on the floor going down that son of a bitch. And I remember Arlo Wells was so mad one day, he was doing that in that mud, and it ripped his front bumper off.
Oh, man.
That's how deep the mud was.
Oh, man.
And old Arlo was a go-getter. I mean, that fucking truck was in high motion all the time. It was...
Stormy, remember the mud on Stormy?
Oh.
When it kept cutting the road down on the southbound side, because they couldn't do it on the northbound side. You'd go off the road. So that shoulder against that northbound lane, and it was down to the big rock. That, like I had here.
Yeah.
It was into that big rock.
Yeah, it would get muddy. It would get awful. I mean, there was sometimes those Well, on the north side of the pass, the road was all built with river rock, so it was all round, and all the fines would go away. And you'd get so mad. I mean, sometimes it would take you hours and hours and hours in second gear. You'd stick it, every once in a while you get mad, stick it in third gear, and then watch your hood start going like this, and you think, well, the radiator ain't going to make it 50 yards, so I better slow back to second gear. And it was like that all the way to frickin' Prudhoe.
Wow.
I mean, it would take all day.
Big fist-sized rock.
Yeah.
Big rock.
It was all because the fines just went away, and they was all round river rock. It was just like bang, 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 bang. I mean, it would literally make you mad,
Well, what's the worst breakdown you had up there
Oh, but the worst breakdown. Geez, I've had a few of them.
that you had to repair to keep going?
Oh, I've rebuilt my fuel pump sitting in the middle of a hill a few times. That took about 2 days because I had to wait for parts.
Which hill is that?
That was like, what is that, about 36 mile?
Oh, on the Elliott?
Yeah. I sat almost about 3/4 of the way up the tail. Lost the pump drive because I have a tendency to overfuel things, and I sheared the pump drive off, and then it fucked up my pump too. So finally found a guy in town that would machine me 1.5-inch drives for my pump so I could put 425 pounds of rail pressure on there and still keep my pump working. Boy, those old Cummins really crack when you got them like that. They like.
So you're adding extra air pressure to that, or what are you doing?
Well, no, it's the rail pressure it puts into what you can put into the injector so you can make them really squirt, and then we'd get them injectors in the lathe and drill them little tiny holes out, a little extra size, and you could really make them things run. They were scary. I mean, if you were pulling a heavy load with some of them old Cummins motors, you could have that left front wheel about that high off the ground going up the hill just like this. Man, I'm cool. Break a lot of shit, though.
That was probably back in the 80s or something, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, they liked it. They was fun. Jerry Willett was the one that could turn up a goddamn Cummins engine, though. There ain't nothing. There wasn't a 600K model that was safe from that old 475 in his truck.
Wasn't he rebuilding that every couple months or something like that?
Yeah, he didn't care.
Yeah, he liked to tear them apart.
He did. He was good at it. He's a really good mechanic. He was an excellent mechanic. But boy, if he knew how to make a Cummins run. I mean, that thing was scary. You watch him go up the shelf there, and he's going 35, 40 miles an hour when everybody else is doing 18, Boom. He says, I rode with him, and he was right, too. He said, yeah, that old engine get to vibrating, and he says, fuck it, give it more gas. That's what he's doing. I mean, you don't even want to look at the stack temperature. I mean, I was always taught if you can keep it around 1,200 degrees on the pyro and it's not building too fast, you're safe, If it starts building fast, you need to either get some RPM back in there or shift down.
Yeah, crack a piston.
Yeah, you'll crack them. We used to hop up them old 335s, and they would outrun any 400 that you ever saw. But they broke head bolts a lot. I used to keep about a dozen of them in the box here, and torque wrench and shit. I could jump out and swap a broken head bolt in 10 minutes because they start chirping. They start making a chirpy noise.
And usually you could pull that out with a screwdriver.
You could usually. Most of the time, you could use a long screwdriver and get them to come right out.
Sean used to have to change a lot of them.
I thought he said he had a welding rod or something
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember what he said, how he did that. But.
Yeah, they would.
I use a screwdriver because usually it's a jagged cut. You just get in there and just turn it out.
Yeah, they're not tight once the head's broke off. Yeah, and then the old Jimmys, the fuel was pretty dry, so it would stick an injector. So a lot of us that like Jimmys, we would weld little T-handles on the valve cover because they just had little T-handles, little screws on tops and down the center, and you could whip them off real quick, and you had a dead blow hammer and see which injector stuck and smack that fucker and get it go because it stuck at whatever RPM that injector was going. So sometimes that was 2150. I had a V12 run away from me going down the hill into the river, and it's sitting there turning like 2,300 RPM wide freaking open because the injector stuck wide open. And I couldn't get it to shut off. The emergency shut-off cable broke, and then I'm like, fuck. I jump out of my truck and knock the covers off the air cleaners, the cab over, and shoved my coveralls in there, and then fucking coveralls went down all the way to the frickin' air cleaner before it killed the motor.
Oh, man.
I'm like, holy shit. Then you're out there taking the valve covers off, see which injector's stuck. Then somebody figured out, hey, if you just put some ATF or something in the oil and it keeps them injectors from sticking, they just stick. They're so dry it would stick to the barrels and it'd make the injector stick.
Oh, because the fuel's so dry.
The fuel rack on a Detroit works, it's this way on top of the engine. So if you stick one, they're all sitting at that speed because you can't turn the rack. Then later they started making the rack spring loaded, so at least it would just be kind of a high idle when one of them stuck. But boy, the old ones, they were solid, and man, when one of them stuck, that's how fast the engine was going.
Oh man, some scary times.
Oh, it just makes you move faster than normal.
Never a dull moment.
Yeah, that was always nice. That kind of stuff was fun, though. Yeah, I spun out on the Yukon River Bridge 2 or 3 times because they would resurface the bridge with new wood. Well, new wood on a 7% grade when it's wet and slick is slick. It would spin right out on that stupid bridge. You'd be up there. I've spun out in the summertime in a rainstorm on the Yukon River Bridge and had to put a set of chains on to get up the goddamn bridge.
Weren't you one of the first guys on that bridge when they opened it?
I was the 4th guy in line when they opened it. They actually asked us to sit and wait because they wanted us to try the bridge out because we were headed for the hovercraft. Yeah. It was fall, and it was just about, the stuff was starting to freeze up, and I can't remember the guy's name. He had a brown cab over Peterbilt, worked for Bayless and Roberts, and he took a run at the hill. Well, he used to work at Bayless and Roberts, but they were out of business by then. But I think they were out of business by then. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But they left a fucking lip on that bridge about like that. It about busted his nuts when he hit that thing. He said he bounced about 16 times off the roof of the cab, and he spun out right. First guy across the bridge spun out right in the middle. He couldn't get up that son, but he back, and fucking he's getting all crooked. Finally gave up, put some chains on, and then they went over there and put some more gravel up to the bridge and got it a little smoother. And the next guy tried it, he spun out because the deck was just slick. It was just, it was like finished grade wood, and it was smooth like that toolbox. It was wet and a little bit of frost on it, and you couldn't get up it. So the rest of us just chained up. We chewed up their brand new fancy bridge until we got enough splinters going that the rest of the guys could go up the bridge.
Man, I can't imagine. It's like, man, this is always going to be a chore like this, getting up this bridge. It's like,
and the only reason, they should have just put it over where we used to cross the river because it's flat on either side and a nice gentle hill coming down to it. But they needed a place to hang the pipe, and that's basically why the stupid bridge got built, because the pipe hangs underneath the bridge.
Yeah.
I always wondered why they put it at that angle right there, or put it there.
Yeah, no, it's just, basically it was a pipe holder, and they just moved the road over there, but the old road was just down the way. That old stupid hovercraft was stupid. It was a really first generation hovercraft, so, if you could get trucks on it side by each, but if you loaded one on the side, which you had to, it would tip the stupid thing over so bad it would lose its air on one side, so you had to get side by each and drive on it at the same time if you were loaded. You could go on there empty.
They'd tip that over?
Oh, fuck, you'd tip that thing up, and then it would lose all
air
the
pressure.
Would lose the air underneath the skirt, and then the damn thing would fall down. It's going like this, and everybody's freaking out. It's like, well, we're going to be in the river. Well, yeah, we keep doing this, we probably will.
At least you knew how to swim.
But you had to, if you were loaded going north, you needed to get 2 guys side by each and drive on at the same time.
Yeah.
And then it was fine.
So you probably don't miss that old hovercraft.
Well, I've rode lots of boats across the river, but that was a sucky thing, that boat. I've rode the George Black Ferry at Dawson lots and lots of times.
Yeah.
It's just one truck on, but that's a fun thing to do because you had to, in the fall, the river drops a little bit, so they'd be stuck on the gravel bar there, so that he'll stick his arm out the window and he's going like this. You better hit that boat in about 3rd gear at a hell bent for fucking election, and when you're about halfway on the boat, you hear him full throttle on the boat, and then when you get to the end, the guy down there, he tells you to stop, and you slam on the brakes, and it makes the boat go like this, and it hops it off the bar. And once I've had, they wouldn't come off the bar. I had to back off the fucking boat and take a run again. Everybody's laughing. The tourists are over there watching, you know, because they're like, what the? Them guys, everybody on the boat's going, come on, faster. And you're like, well, I got, you know, there's nothing, you can drive off in the river because it's just, the ramp's just up about like this, you know. But get out there and just slam on the brakes, and all the fuel would slide forward, hit the front of the tank, and the boat would go like this, and away we'd go.
That's probably not with a loaded truck, though, huh?
No, that was...
Oh, I mean, if you're empty, it's probably not as bad.
No, you still have to do it sometimes. Because the way they come in, you know, the Yukon's got a pretty good current. It's like 20 knots, you know, so they push gravel out there. They make piles of gravel, and they keep pushing it out with a dozer, and then the river washes it away, so it makes a sandbar, and they can't just poke straight out into the current, so they're like this, and they come in and they make this little ramp, so it's got a little eddy there, so it always makes a gravel bar. And that's a double ender boat. It's got a propeller on each end.
Oh.
You know, so he can push and pull, but he can't when he's up against the bank use the one, so then he has to just this one, and then when he gets out in the middle and starts going, he'll reverse one, and one's going forward and one's going backwards.
Huh.
And then one time we were out in that George Black ferry, and the ferry ran out of fuel. And down the river we went. And we were like 3 miles down the creek before somebody caught up to us with a boat with some fuel in it. And then they're out there, and it's underneath my truck, so we had to shinny down into there and open a little hole, and they stuck a hose down in there, and
Trying to siphon.
somebody's down there trying to get, there's a 3406 cat, so they're trying to get it running again, and we're just down the river we go. And pretty soon, about half hour later, we come back around the corner and go back up to the other side. I got to ride that. It was kind of fun.
So they didn't have that one on cables like that hovercraft, huh?
No, that's up at going into Dawson City. They still run it. It's run there every summer. If you go across the top of the world, you ride the ferry.
Yeah.
So that's a cool thing. I love doing that. I did that for Big State for years, running across there hauling fuel to Dawson.
I've never been in there, but that would be fun.
That's an awesome town. It's just cool. It's like Fairbanks used to be when I was a kid. I mean, they left all the old buildings. It's still got all wood sidewalks until the pipeline came along. All Fairbanks just looked like that. It had all wood sidewalks, old buildings. It was cool, nice people. Then we got a bunch of retards from America up here, and they just, you know, they ruined it, made one-way streets, and got rid of all the bars, and, you know, like, they took everything away from Fairbanks of why people came to visit it, and they made it just like where they came from. It's like, I used to go to the city council meetings. I've been at 86 for life from city council meetings, and the borough assembly too, actually. They don't like me, my opinion in there, but I used to say it pretty regular, because I figure if you don't talk it, that's how those assholes get away with all the shit they do, is because nobody says anything.
Yeah. They
just complain about it. Well, go down there and say something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, honestly, that's how you get shit done right.
Yep.
Somebody's got to be the asshole. I don't mind volunteering for that.
Have you had any scary times trucking? I mean, is it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, shit, yeah. I had a runaway coming off the beaver slide, and
I think a lot of people have.
I was running. I was bound determined that I was not going to blow my K model up, so by the time I was halfway down, I was in neutral. And I went across the flats, and let me tell you what, when you're doing about 110 with a load of pipe on, that road looks like it's that wide. And I went, and my seat was bottoming out, and it hurt my back, so I'm kind of standing up, driving like this, and I went all the way up past Arctic Circle, and I topped the hill before I got it back into high gear. And I didn't even slow down, I just went to Coldfoot. And I got to Coldfoot, and I'm sitting there and having a coffee, and all of a sudden my legs started going like this. I was like, God damn, that's how long it took literally, it started doing this shit, and I was like holding it down. What the hell? That's how scared I was.
It's amazing how sharp that corner is, the bottom arc circle, when you're doing
Well,
that.
you can do it, though.
Yeah.
You're like, and that bridge is awful rough when you're doing 100, let me tell you.
I forget who it was come off that beaver slide. They just rebuilt this truck, and I think it's C.H. Rose truck is who it was. Come down through there, the guy went to hit his brakes, and the bolts they had to tighten up, and so the brake pedal went to the floor. So he had no brakes.
Oh,
And
I
he
know.
probably had a squall handle, but he probably didn't think to grab that.
Well, what happened to me is I ended up hauling my truck home, but I had just redone the brakes, and I bought those, that was when those shoebox kits came out. The first time they tried, doing a preset box full of all the goodies you need to do your brakes. And I put all them on there. Well, they didn't tighten all the rivets came out of my brakes, so my pads all fell out. That's why I didn't have any fucking brakes. And when I got back to town, I said that, and those guys were so afraid I was going to sue them. They put my truck in the shop, and I had new brakes, new drums, new every goddamn thing.
Had they set the pads themselves?
They
Or were they from the States?
Well, I don't know who did them, but whoever they stood behind them. Let's put it that way. Where I bought them, they had not. They must have been using a pneumatic riveter or something, and they just didn't do it right, and they did not. They weren't cinched down, and it sure. By the time I got there, I had no pads left.
I remember rebuilding those all the time when I was a kid, grinding them rivets off and relining them, and that was my job as a.
Yeah.
Little
I've done
kid.
lots. Yeah.
Hopefully, I didn't do your truck.
No, you didn't.
We
These
had
were
crimpers on them, so we could.
No,
crimp
these
them.
were kits you could actually buy it where you didn't have to buy the pads like we always used to buy the pads like you and just put, re-rivet them and put new pads on them.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I remember doing that as a kid. It's like, man, I haven't done that since. It's like
I
nobody
don't know.
does
You
that
guys
anymore.
know Ron Lawrence, of
Oh,
course.
yeah.
Well, when Ron first came up here, he had an old Sealand Peterbilt he bought, and it had a 450K model in it. But I remember laughing at Ron. I'm meeting him one day, and all of a sudden, he's all over the fucking road. And then he stops, and I pulled up there. What's going on? Well, that stupid little bracket that holds the steering column to the dash had come off. And he's trying to hold the steering column between his knees and steer it like this. And it was wobbling all over. He was having a hell of a time. And he finally got it stopped. And we were laughing. I was laughing. I wonder what the hell he's doing. He's like all over the freaking road. He said, it's really hard to hold that steering column straight and try to turn that son of a bitch. Because he had it between his knees. He slid down. He's grabbing a hold of
The
it.
old knuckle, the U-joints right there.
Yeah, that was funnier than heck.
Oh, man. I have to remember. I want to go see Ron this summer, so I'll have to ask him that
Yeah,
story.
he'd probably remember that. That was up by Adigan Pass, actually.
Oh, man.
I had a guy who was following me coming in, and one of yours had the mud. And we're coming off the knob, coming down through it. That stuff is slick, I forget who it was. Somebody pulled somebody up through there. They had an oversized load, and the push truck was tied tight. Well, the push truck laid over,
Uh-oh.
and they're still putting down the road, laid over.
I thought that was Lenny, wasn't it?
No, that was him and old Steve Wilford up there at Happy Valley. This was down there at the knob. So anyhow, we're coming back, and that mud is deep. And this guy, I can't remember who it was now, but comes down the hill and he says, "I can't even steer this truck." And I look back, and his wheels are turned like this, pointed in together. I said, "Your tie rod, come off."
Yeah, they used to.
They used to do it a lot.
The cabo repeats were really good for that. The tie rod would always come off on the one side, so but you still had the left wheel steering because it was hooked up on that side, straight. But the other one would be doing this or weird shit, and then you'd hear the tie rod banging around under there. I can remember back to Ron Lawrence again, seeing him down there, and he was underneath there with some baling wire, wiring the stupid tie rod end up so he could get home with it.
Yeah, well, that's what this was. The guy comes down there and says, "Your tie rod come off." So he comes down there and mud's a foot deep. And so I get out. Okay, this, what happens? They bend.
Yep.
And so we got it over, got its wheels kind of lined up for maybe we get the tie rod on. So we got the tie rod on. Then it usually takes a jack. You jack the end up, put that ball up in there. And I got that up in there, so I got a bungee cord, wrapped a bungee around it quite a few times. I said, okay, we can probably go to town now. We go to town. This guy, he's going 60, 70 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And I said, I just made a temporary fix, but if that strap comes off, you're going to wreck. You better slow it down.
Yeah, some people, we brought a lot of weird shit home like that nowadays they throw you in jail for, but it was just getting it home. That's all the important thing was.
It's a lot of work getting some of that stuff home sometimes.
Yeah. We used to like to, I've done it a few times, but ride in the decked up truck, going home from Prudhoe. And it's the best nap you'll ever have because it's really smooth up there, with all the air rides and shit. Except when John Sauer's driving. When Johnny's driving, we'd leave the river and I'd sit up there and pretend I'm driving, And when John's driving, when you go around the corner, you can look down either side of the truck because you're leaned out like this. And you can see, he's going a little fast for the corner, and then you can see John's brain, I'm going a little fast for the corner, fuck it. You can see him grab a gear, black smoke come out, and boom, around the corner you go.
Was that Dirty Shirt or?
No, John Sauer.
Oh, okay.
Good.
Dirty Shirt John, he's a good driver. I would ride in this truck.
He got hurt.
Yeah, he did. He broke his neck.
Yeah,
back.
right in front of us the other day. Last winter.
He is a good truck driver. I would ride. He's one of the few guys I ride with in the sleeper and not even worry about it. He is a good driver.
Man, he can go trucking too. He can work.
Yeah. No, I've had bad experiences with driving with other drivers. Several times that I've drove with them sleeping away, and I've woke up once upside down and once standing on the end of the sleeper. The one time I was upside down, it was an Aerodyne in Kenworth, and it broke the top windows out, and it was wintertime, so we went scooping down the trail, and it was just like scoop me in full of snow. I'm all in there like this, all packed in with snow in the sleeper, almost naked, Shit, somebody's out there digging you out. Hey, you all right? Yeah, fine. Just need to get out of here. Sitting there like this.
Where was that at?
Oh, that was up there by Jim River, actually. Missed the corner past the pipeline and rolled off the outside of the corner.
Oh, coming south?
Yeah.
Were you having a nightmare when that happened?
No,
or?
I was just dreaming, about fat girls and shit. Everything's good. All of a sudden, you hear, Jesus Christ. That's when you know something's not quite right. Stuff is funny, though.
Do you remember when Dick Mackey came up to Coldfoot and started Coldfoot?
Yeah.
Do you have any stories of that?
Well, that was the best Coldfoot. I wish it had stayed like that because all of us guys, we all hauled free plywood and shit down, built that little shack around there, and everybody had their cup on the wall. Big old barrel stove, dirt floor in there. It was the best damn food and best truck stop ever right there. That was awesome.
Was that a 3-barrel stove or?
No, it was just a big old barrel stove.
Okay.
They
had 3 stacked there.
Yeah, I think 2 or 3. Yeah, I can't remember. I just remember being a barrel stove and it with
carboned up too much.
Plywood shack with no fucking insulation. It needed to be ripping when it was cold out. But it had dirt floor in it there for the first little bit. But
3 foot long.
So was Dick cooking back then, or did he have someone cooking?
He had a guy cooking. Dick did a little bit, but his food wasn't the best. But he had a guy there that was, I can't remember, what was that little short guy, real stocky. He was a good cook. But everybody had a big wall with their cup on it, with their name on it and shit. It was kind of cool. And the Magabar guys were hauling lots of mud boxes down, so they built that shack out of mud boxes.
Yeah. Oh, man.
I liked that place. That was good back then. Nowadays, if you eat there, and it's like, if you make it to Dietrich without the drizzling shits, you did pretty good. They should put an outhouse at Dietrich. There probably is now.
Well, they got that one right before there, and them.
Yeah. But the old Dietrich gravel pit, you could pull lots of trucks in there. They used to have the
checkpoint
right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they used to have it at the river. Then they moved it up to Dietrich.
And then they had it on the shelf.
Yeah.
And then they had the one there at 41 Mile.
Yeah.
During the pipeline. Yeah.
41 Mile, that was during
9/11.
After 9/11.
Yeah, military had that one.
On the Dalton or okay.
I need to stop for a second. I drank too much coffee.
Okay, yeah, we'll take a break.
I gotta go pee.
I took some notes when I was talking to you on the phone yesterday.
Uh-oh.
So I was gonna just ask you about what we were talking about, because And I wasn't very good about. I wasn't very good with my notes.
No, that's even.
I'm
not
trying to.
worse good at notes either.
I'm trying to read what I'm trying to understand what I wrote.
Can I ask him something while you're looking through
No,
that?
you can ask me anything. I'm just talking away. And
So, did you end up buying Dad's old motorcycle?
I don't know which one it is. Which one was it?
It's like a pink and a white Suzuki.
Oh, I had
750.
that. Yeah, that thing like killed me. That's a 2-stroke, 3-cylinder hot rod.
Is that the one Uncle John wrecked? Or was that a different one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I had that. That thing bike was that. I kept that for a long time. I did buy that. I forgot all about that. Oh, water buffalo, they used to call those.
That's probably 50 years ago, huh?
Yeah.
Or 45?
My brother John was in a wreck with that, and he had Linda Million on the back of the motorcycle.
Oh, did he?
And Johnny Euline, or Lean, used to work for Mac over there in the old Mac place over there. But on the river,
Mark Moore Mac?
the Mac dealer.
Yeah, that was Mark Moore.
Yeah. And he come out of Sunset Strip, or he run right into those guys, and they come out there, and Linda was holding the back seat or something, ripped the back. I think the back seat was ripped off that thing. But anyhow, she come off there, and she was fighting him. I don't know if you knew Linda or not. She was probably your age, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Linda Million. Well, she's dead now.
Yeah.
She got drinking one night there in Anchorage and walked home and thought she was home, laid down in the snowbank and died.
Wow.
Yeah. I've known a few people that did that, laid down too drunk and froze to death.
Yeah,
Died of hypothermia.
yeah. And, it's kind of weird, the Mac dealer, you probably remember the Mac dealer out there at 6 Mile.
Oh, yeah.
You know who owned that?
No. I don't know if that was Mark Moore or not. Probably not.
Dan Gorod from
Oh,
Power Transmission.
yeah. Dan.
His dad owned that place.
Really?
He was a Mac dealer, Mac truck dealer in Fairbanks.
Yeah.
How come I've never heard that?
Yeah. And Dan went to school, to college to be a machinist. And then instead of being a machinist, he started a parts store.
Did he start that, or did somebody else start it and he bought it from him?
No, I'm sure he's.
No, he started
I thought
it.
he's the one that started.
Yeah,
Him
he
and that.
started.
What was that older guy's name that used to work with him?
Yeah, I remember.
He died of cancer.
Yeah, I remember that guy. I like Dan, man. He's a good parts guy. He can
Yeah.
find you anything.
Oh yeah.
I'd like to interview him.
Yeah, he should. He's
Yeah.
he's
yeah,
the same.
do
He's
that.
part of this place because he's been there forever, and he's kept us guys in truck parts when everybody else tells you they can't find it and they don't do this, they don't make that shit. And Dan's like, "Pfft, I got that shit right here in the back.
And then he'll go back and get it and be back in a
Well,
minute.
Yeah.
We were having trouble trying to get what was it? Air filters for the air dryers for these new Peets. Well, they changed it to metric thread. And the last one I'd got, I had to go to a Kenworth dealer in Seattle because I'd gone to like 5 or 6 Peterbilt dealers and nobody carried it.
Yeah.
And Ray down there says, "Hey, give me that number." He gave me the number. He called me there next week. Says, "Hey, we got a couple cases of them," and everybody was looking for them. Nobody knew what number or which one to get. Peterbilt couldn't get it up here, and
Yeah. They're
so Dan ended up getting the filters.
Wow.
yeah.
So you were telling me on the phone yesterday you were running in 20 below, and it got up to like 50 above or something on the pass.
Oh, that was a weird. It was like February. It was like 40 below at Coldfoot, and we wandered north, and it was Andy Anderson was ahead of us. You remember Andy? From
Oh
Linda.
yeah.
He was like that guy was a frickin' machine, man, for doing the LTL to Prudhoe. But he had his own truck, and back then the Linden guys they all carried drum boxes. But yeah, we went up the hill, and the pass was like 15 below on the bottom on this side, and it was 20 above on top, and started off the other side. And by the time we got a quarter of the way down, it was 50 above and pouring down frickin' rain. And old Andy come down the hill, and he was like not under control, and he fucking did a 180 in the middle of the road at 30 miles an hour halfway down the north side of the pass, and hit the bank so hard it shit his drum box off. And he made it down the hill. I mean, but this drum box didn't, but he did. And then I can't remember who I was with. Tom, what the hell is his last name? Anyway, there's about Holcomb. We were all together, and we were like that. And we got to the bottom, and we got to the old camp parking lot there, and we all slid together and then slid over, and we thought we were going over the bank, and we finally stopped, and we got chains on, and we had to chain up everything, steer chains, truck, trailer, to stay on the road. And it took us like 12 hours from there just one way to get to Prudhoe. It rained. It was 40 below just the day before, and it was 50 above and pouring down rain. They got a little willow or something in there.
Oh, man.
And it was so freaking slick, you had to straddle the center line with your chains on to stay on the road. Do we want to camp out here, or should we go for it? We got to get out of this shit sooner or later. Well, we didn't. It went all the way to Prudhoe.
Oh,
Was
man.
this the 80s when that happened?
Yeah.
Okay.
Early 80s.
Yeah.
I remember in there, so slick, rain on the ice. And I thought, if I could just get to Alaskan 2, get Alaskan 2. If I get on the bridge, it's not going to slide off the road. I got to the bridge, chained that baby up. Away we went.
Well, we got to the big flat spot where the old camp was in the
airport.
Yeah, at the airport, and it's wide there. So we thought, surely we stopped right in the road, but we ended up clean over to the side, about to go over the bank before we finally stopped, and we were slid together, touching.
Yeah, the old road went down through the camp.
Yep, the old road went down
that
through
high
the camp.
road was the airport.
Was the airstrip, yep.
And the left side of the road was where the fuel tanks were. Helicopter and
yep.
airplane.
There was a cool thing happened, a couple of cool things I remember happening there. One of them was come by there one time, and here's a fella up on top of his trailer, and he says, I stopped, and then there's remember that great big old frickin' sow that would hang out there, that big grizzler?
Oh, yeah.
And she would come right up to the truck, because them dipshits were feeding her, and she's a big bear. Holy smokes, that was a big bear. I don't remember who was up on top of his trailer, but he'd been there about 3 hours. And every time he tried to get down, she'd come smoking around the truck, and he climbed, he was out taking a whiz, and he was closer to this ladder on the tanker than he was his door, so he went up on top of the tank. And he'd been up there about 3 hours waiting for somebody to come along and scare the fucking bear off.
I've heard that story. Was that Elmer Works?
It could have been Elmer. Yeah.
I think I heard that story. That was Elmer.
I liked old Elmer.
I know somebody was up there too, and the bear kept chasing them around a pickup. And he'd look underneath to see where it was at. He'd go to move, and the bear would be looking underneath which way he's going.
Yeah.
Was that the same bear that had all those cubs for many years?
No, different bear.
Okay.
Yeah. Now this
bear was the one that stayed up kind of behind Chandler Camp.
Yeah.
And guys,
she'd go over
guys
there.
were drinking one night, and they were shooting beer balls out of guys' hands. And then they started to target the bear. And they shot that bear up on the hill above the camp. And then the one dude there took that bear hide and took it down to, you remember where Green had their camp down there?
Yeah.
He took it down there and buried some of Green's stuff, and then Fish and Game out. Somebody told him about it or whatever. He come down there and found that bear hide down there.
Wow.
And the guy ended up having to go to court and barrel. I don't know what ever happened.
Yeah.
But
I remember. You remember old Straight Arrow there?
oh yeah, I call him Ben Earl.
Yeah, he was a pain in the ass, but he's a nice guy, but he was full of shit like the Christmas goose. Pete Wiley, he was a good dude actually, but he loved to shoot skeet, and he had his shotgun in the truck, and I was laughing. They were at Adigate Camp, and he was showing Mason his new shotgun, and he must have had it loaded, and he blew the top backup light off the side of Mason's truck. He was holding it like this, and boom, and he blew the backup light right off the side of his truck.
I used to laugh at old Mason. He'd come down the road, a lot of guys, talk about now guys, especially older guys, younger guys talk about these old guys, you know. They'd all talk about Mason. Boy, he's just hauling ass all the time, you know, and talking about rocking everybody. And Mason, he'd never say nothing back to him. He just kept going.
Well, Mason, too, when he got older, he couldn't see that good. So, and the young guys never figured it out. If you meet him and you scoot over, well, he'd scoot over. He's lining up on you because the lights bothered his eyes. So if you kept scooting over, he just kept scooting over. He lined up on your lights.
Well,
and he'd go by you.
That's what I tell these guys. That's what I tell these guys all the time. The road being narrow way back then. That's what we'd do. We'd line up with the other guy because you can see the shadow off his truck.
Yep.
You'd line up.
You just line up on somebody.
That's the way you worked it, back and forth. Okay. And,
you're lining up on each other. You're both doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're lining up so you don't.
So you clear.
Yeah, so you clear. You know, you line up on each other because you know how far apart you are if you're lining up with your partner.
And you might clip mirrors.
You might.
It might be close, but you missed.
And the one thing else we always did is we ran on the wrong side of the road in a blow. We always ran. Everybody switched sides, left side.
Oh, really?
All day. You could trust everybody to be on the other side of the road because you're on the left side, so you can see the edge. You just scoot
that
over
makes
there.
sense.
There's the edge. Everybody did it, and then we started getting these guys from outside, and they wouldn't be there. They'd be on the side they're supposed to be on. So then you're meeting them like, oh shit.
Well, we're talking like markers going into Prudhoe.
Yeah.
You knew where the Franklin camp was, but the next marker was over the pipeline crossing.
Yep.
And we always went by the lighthouse. By now, it's kind of hard to tell because they got another building in front of that lighthouse now. So you can't see that light as far away until you're right on it. And you might see a marker for an Alaska access road. That's it. No reflectors.
No, and the other thing is that old road was only like a foot off the tundra, but it started out like, and then it spread out. It was like 6 trucks wide half the time.
Yeah.
And you could get out there and turn right around in the road and be going the other freaking direction in the blow, and all of a sudden you're like, fuck, I was just here. I got to turn around and go back again. You know, I mean, literally we would go, and we didn't care about the weather. We'd just go. You know, you might drop off a 62 mile, and it might be 8 hours before you got into Prudhoe. You're sitting there in second gear at a dead idle with your head out the window. Oh, shit.
Did you guys ever wear ski goggles when you did that?
No, I never did. But
Okay.
some people would. I think like Dave would do that. Small would. Dave liked to try anything. He's like Mikey. We'll let Mikey do it.
You said something yesterday about a hunting lodge on Van Horn Road.
Yeah, no, there was the old Van Horn Lodge was an actual hunting lodge, and you know, people don't realize it is out of town, and that people would go out there and get a room and go moose hunting. You know, and Van Horn was an old dirt road. It was an old shit dirt road originally. But yeah, I don't know when they got rid of the old Van Horn Lodge, but you can probably look that up in the archives. It's probably got a picture of that old lodge.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. It's hard for me to remember the place.
We were kids, but it was still there.
So you would get a room and then you go out back towards the
no,
river?
it wasn't in town. I mean, that's like on the old road that was like 10 miles out of Fairbanks when you know, by the way the old road went, everybody go out there in the fall and go moose hunting.
Okay.
Along the river. Yeah, it was good moose hunting. And you could stay at the lodge and go moose hunting. And you could drink beer, and the old lady wasn't there, and go hunting, and drink beer, and go hunting.
Yeah.
And drink more beer, and go hunting.
Behind Lakeview Terrace, you'd be able behind there, the hunting.
Yeah,
area.
always, yeah. Yeah.
So what about the peanut butter and jelly at Live and Good?
Oh, that was Sam's restaurant there. When you come off the hill, the old road into Live and Good, it made a really sharp corner at the bottom. It was kind of supered, and if you went off the corner, that's the way the old ice road would go. You go down across a little wooden bridge into Live and Good, and there was a little cafe there, Sam's. He was a cool dude, good cook. He hated peanut butter and jelly with an absolute passion, and he had it on the menu because the dipshit truck drivers would ask him for a peanut butter and jelly sandwich to go, you know, like pack a lunch kind of thing. And he had it on the menu for $50 because he hated making it. So it was $50. He'd make you one, but you're by God going to pay $50 for it. He hated peanut butter and
Wonder
frickin'
why.
jelly. Well, everybody that cooks has something they don't like to cook. Well, that's not really cooking, but that was his thing. He absolutely detested peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Probably that's all he had to eat when he was a kid or something, and he don't like it.
Oh.
I don't know why. I'm just guessing on
Makes
that.
sense.
Yeah, a friend of ours, a guy I went to high school with in Haines, his mother, Betty Hagen, realtor, bought that place.
Oh yeah, Old Sam's. Oh yeah.
And yeah, he was cooking there for her
When did they buy that?
a long time, about time pipeline.
Yeah, it was good food. I mean, and yeah, there
Well,
was
that because Hilltop wasn't open.
no Hilltop, no.
So if you wanted something to eat, you could get that before you headed up the road.
Yeah, and Livengood Camp was a pretty good camp for food, but I mean, we had to go past it. That's the thing. The old road isn't like it is now at Livengood. You came up and you had to stop and turn 90 degrees and start out from a dead stop going up 1 mile. And the weird part was coming down it because you had to come down and come. There was a stop sign there. You had to stop and turn left. 90
Sharp.
degrees, right at
Sharp.
the bottom of the.
So was that
fucking
always slicked up from
Well,
guys
where
slowing
the
down?
old road? You see that
Yeah.
road there?
Yeah.
It just turned and went that way.
Wow.
And when you come down off the hill to Livengood, it was very wide.
Right where that
That's
sign
where
is,
everybody
right?
Parked
Yeah.
Yeah.
to take their chains off or put their chains on.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was a wide, straight stretch of the road. Yeah.
And you can still see it cut through there.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
you could drive on
Yeah,
it
you
actually.
put a lot of trucks could stop in there, probably like.
Yeah, Dad, weren't you saying that you were driving on that and then you came back a while later and the road was
I was
dropping
on
through
that
the
3-year contract drilling for the drilling company for Northwest Gas.
Yeah.
I come back to town. I'm coming down off 1 mile. I'm waiting to make my turn. I said, where am I at?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It changed the road.
The old, right when you left Mule Skinner's place, that's right when you started up. You went right up over all them hills all the way to Livengood. You can still see the old road there. And it was very windy and twisty.
Trying to make the corner dropping into Livengood because so polished.
Yeah.
Very slick.
And all them
very
corners
slick.
were sharp. There was 2 switchbacks coming down the last hill. There were very sharp turns. I mean, they were, sharp turns, and everything had a super in it, and yeah.
Oh man.
The old 52 mile, that hill there was a bummer too. It had a really sharp corner in it, and
Yeah, a couple.
a couple of them. And I remember, I can't remember that fuel company in town. They were forever. Old Stack up there in Manly would haul his own fuel, but there was another outfit that would go out and go into Minto and Manly. And the old guy that drove, he had an old Astro cab over with no sleeper, with a truck tank on it and a pup, and it had an old 318 and a 5 and a 4. I remember that old truck, but he had frostbit his nose, so half his nose was missing on one side.
That was there or from Colford? Was he Colford? Or?
No, well, that guy, but he around that corner at 52 mile, he went up that little hill and then he spun out and slid backwards, and that whole truck and trailer was in the ditch. Just the 2 front wheels were sitting on the road, and it was sitting like this, It's like he parked it perfectly, but it was sitting at about this angle. I don't know how the hell it must have had to use 3 cats to get that fucker out of that hole. There was no. Old Rudy Voigt was the only one that even had a wrecker, and most of the time when something wrecked, you just hauled a cat up there, a couple of them, and got to pulling and winching on shit until you either broke it or brought it out.
How many miles do you think you got with a truck and pup up there?
Truck and pups, I've drove lots. I don't know.
A lot of miles.
Yeah, well, I know I have more than 3 million miles on the haul road, which ain't that many, really, because I've drove a lot. But I'd say a third of that's probably truck and trailer. I like truck and trailers.
Yeah.
A lot of lowboying. I did lowboying for years. A lot of heavy stuff. But that's almost like flying float planes to me. That's just like fun. I like doing that shit. It's a lot of work, but it's fun.
Yeah, it seemed like there used to be a lot of truck and trailers up there.
Well, truck and trailers is the best way to haul fuel, period. It always has been and it always will be. It's the most efficient way. But we used to do them, we were always hauling other stuff, so we would always, didn't matter. You'd haul some fuel in the truck. Sometimes you'd pull a little flatbed behind you. just a small one, 28, 30 footer, and haul freight stuff on it. Because you're like Sanford and Son going up the road. You look like sometimes, but
Especially a lot of the mines and different things you were doing
the
like
mines.
that.
We always did that with the mines. I did that a lot with Big State with the twin steer. I just we would do that going into battles or something, and you're just out. Them twin steers really worked good off road. They were the best off road truck I've ever drove for hauling shit off the road.
Yeah.
They're just absolutely perfect for that. My twin steer that I had was a twin steer tri-drive, so it was, and then I had a 5-axle pup too. The weird thing is I could haul as much as an A-train. Legally I could haul 14.3
Really?
with a truck and trailer. And the thing is with a truck and trailer that you can go anywhere with it. If the pickup will fit down the road, the truck and trailer will go there.
Yeah.
That's why they're popular with that old stuff. But that truck I had, that twin steer, had a 6,500 gallon tank on it. So it had a big tank.
So you probably did a lot where you go.
Truck?
Yeah, just the truck had a 6,500 gallon tank.
Yeah, that's big.
And so I had, it's 5 axles, so it was twin steer tri-drive.
Yeah.
And then I pulled an 8,000 gallon pup. But
You probably do that a lot where you go deliver the truck and then come back to your trailer and go
oh
deliver
yeah,
that.
I did that a lot. I had a hose reel on all them, and I would do that going into McCarthy. Actually, Mervyn, you might, if you ever talk to him, I took a whole bunch of pictures for him going into McCarthy once in the wintertime, and he liked the pictures with the old twin steer Pete, the one that's got the log loader on it. I had a chain on every frickin' wheel on that truck. You know how long that took me? I chained up both front wheels, both drivers, both ends of my pup, because when you go into McCarthy in the wintertime, they don't plow the road, and it's pretty tough going, and there's a couple of places where I have to side hill on the overflow that at about a 8 to 9 degree angle sideways, and the lake's right here, and you sitting there, and you got to have a chain on every wheel or you won't sit on there. Yeah. And then one place I stopped and got a good picture. I was driving in the overflow, and my lights were underwater, so I got close to the edge and jumped out and went ahead and came back, took a picture of it because the lights were underwater.
So Mervyn has those pictures now?
Oh yeah, he should have them. I took lots of pictures.
So how did you get into McCarthy?
Well, so in the wintertime, before Keith put a bridge across there on his own private property, we would have to wait till the wintertime, and then we'd drive across the river.
Oh, frozen.
Frozen river, and then you go in over to the airport because you'd have to bring all this fuel in for the airport for the year.
Because I know in summertime that river is so swift.
Oh, that's a boiling son of a
not
bitch.
Go across that.
It runs boulders down through there. You can hear them going boundity bound down the creek, and they're probably the size of D6s,
Wow.
So Keith put his own bridge in there, and he used to live in North Pole, but he moved to McCarthy years and years ago, raised all his kids there, had a little construction company. But it's got 4 railroad car span across there. He built the bridge himself, and he charges you to run across, not us, but he charges.
That's his bridge now?
He owns the bridge. He put it in, and it's his property on both sides of the river. He owns the land on both sides.
Yeah, last time I was there, you could only go across like in a 4-wheeler.
No, he's got his own bridge below that bridge. He put a regular bridge in, but it's just 5 rail cars, I think. I got pictures of it somewhere, but I can't. I got them on one of my the old lady's got them all loaded onto a disc, but I took lots of videos of doing that. It doesn't even look like it just looks like you're driving out in space because you're driving basically like loading yourself on a flatbed, but you got a truck and a trailer going across that on that boiling river.
Oh man,
it looks kind of cool.
That's cool.
Oh yeah, that river. I mean, coming out of that
it comes
glacier.
Down. It really goes.
It hooks, boy, in just a few miles.
I bet you that's a 30-knot current on that thing. It's a boiling. Yeah. You can literally hear the boulders rolling down the creek when it's high. And they're literally boulders, too. So I would go in there and do that, and stuff like that was pretty cool. I really liked running to McCarthy.
Dwight, if you had any advice to give to a new driver that's coming up here to drive the haul road, what kind of advice would you give somebody that's driven down in the States, that has experience down there?
Well, you need to find some grumpy old bastard like me and listen to him, for one thing. That'd save you a lot of pain. Show you how to do stuff properly, like properly chain up and knock the chip off your shoulder, because every time somebody's telling you how to do something, that it's not, they all think you're trying to tell them what to do, which they cop an attitude, and first thing out of their mouth when you'd say something is, well, I know. Well, no, you don't, or I wouldn't be offering my advice. But, if you want to experience a lot of pain, just keep ignoring these old gray-haired grumpy bastards, because we've done it a little bit. And unfortunately for us, there was no communication back in the day, and you didn't have Google or YouTube or any other horse shit. You went out and we see you when you come back, so you learned how to do it all on your own because you were it. And if you couldn't make it work, guess what? You might sit there for a week waiting for the next asshole to come along to give you a hand. Isn't that true, Joe?
Yeah.
That's funny. We were talking to Rob Chambers and Justin Burgess yesterday, and Rob was talking about you, and he's like, man, you had something difficult to do. Just let Dwight go do it. He'll go make it happen.
Yeah, I like doing it. I live for that kind of stuff, personally. Yeah. I just like it. I like doing shit that nobody else wants to. It
gets boring otherwise.
Oh, that time at Coldfoot, you was the only one to come out for Big State. Nobody else would come out with a load for Coldfoot. They're out of field. And Dwight shows up.
I shouldn't have brought my big pup, though. I should have brought my North pup, but I brought my big old heavy 5-axle sled, which coming back empty with a truck and trailer with that big sled back there, it's like 2 sets of chains on every hill, so just wear them. And you better hit it hard so you can make it, because I usually wouldn't bring that trailer. I had a 4-axle one that I had 2 lift axles on, so it was a single steer. The single steer pups are best on off-road. And then, because you want your pup trailer to be tail heavy.
Yeah.
You need, if it ain't tail heavy, it's going to work you to death. But I had 2 lift axles on the back. Yeah.
Very few people know that.
No.
Very few. You're the only one. He's the only one I've ever heard say that.
Well, it's the truth. If your tail is not on a set of doubles, if you want your doubles to go down the road straight, load the thing tail heavy.
Yep.
It'll go down the road straight as a fucking arrow if you load it tail. If you load it nose heavy, it just does this all day. It's so scary you don't even want to look. And just tip the mirrors out so you don't have to watch it. And the only cool part about that is when you have traffic behind you, you get lots of room. Because the fucking thing's doing like this down the road,
I had a set of doubles like that. They loaded for me down there. And they're flatbeds. And it's like, man, everybody coming at me was scared to death. And it's like, I did not want to look back.
And when John, he got the permit there at the state for the hazmat train setup.
Mm-hmm.
We had the first one in the state, Philco Oil and Gas.
Yep.
And I was elected because you had to have 5 years in a tanker driving before they'd put you in the truck. So I run that for the year. They're coming out of Anchorage with gas, 14,000 gallons of gas.
Yep.
And I learned how to load that pup.
Yeah, you got to load them tail heavy. People just don't understand. It's just if
figure
you
that out.
think about it, it's like pulling a sled with a cat. If you load it nose heavy, it digs in, and it does the same. With a pup, it doesn't do that with your truck because you're carrying the weight.
Yep.
So you want it up front.
And you use
but when you're
less
pulling
fuel.
the weight, way less fuel. You need that thing back there, and it makes it steer straight too. It gets rid of that oversteer because it's oversteer and it's doing this.
Yeah, they're taking your power from you.
And it makes it pull like you got like freaking runners on there. If you load that pup tail heavy, you can't hardly even tell it's back there.
Yeah.
You can hook them corners.
Oh yeah. You get spoiled like with a twin steer or a truck and trailer because you can go around the corners 30 miles an hour faster than everybody else. Like when they're out there on the black ice and they're pussyfooting along with their drop visors and their seat on the floor and this much window to look out of, and they're
their glow lights.
Doing 2 miles an hour on the black ice, and here you go by at 60. Hey, see you later.
That's a crazy dude right there. Look at how fast he's going.
I had my wife with me, and I was going to Dawson, and I was trying to make the border because it closed, and I went through I seen one of my Canadian buddies. He's pulling a wide load up there. He's going to miss the border, but I went down through the dip there, and I was doing about 85 on the old gravel, just going because that's a steep fucking hill. And I went down through the dip. You know how the old seat just goes slowly to the bottom when you go down, and you come back up, and the old lady's like, she's perked right up for a change. Usually she don't even care. And then she started laughing because the pilot car on the radio, man, look at that son of a bitch go, he says on the radio when I went down through the dip. Where's his? So I said, trying to make the border before it closed. Oh, that was funny. She wouldn't ride on that. Have you ever been over to Eagle or any of those places?
No, I haven't.
Well, you have. You know the road. So it's kind of skinny and it's really twisty and turny and steep, but the people won't get out of the middle of the road, and it's only like 18-foot top. So, she went with me over there a couple times, and the one time we're coming back and this tour bus wouldn't get over, so I never even slowed down. I just drove down the ditch and banged over the rocks a few times and went by and waved, and off we went. And she's like freaking out because she's down in the ditch with the cab over, which seems pretty wild if you haven't done that. But so the one time it was cracking me up. We come off Jack Wade, and there's some true switchbacks on Jack Wade. And I was showing her how good the twin steer does on gravel and off-road, and she says, well, how fast can you go? And I said, well, let's find out. I already knew how. But she videoed, and she's like, so the corner says speed limit says 35, and I was doing about 50. Come into that thing, and she as we get close to the corner, you're going downhill at about 11%, and then doing this, and then it does a couple of these. And she's like, she never quit, but I hear her over there, and she's going, ah. I kept getting louder and louder, but she kept it up, and she made it all the way down through all the corners. I said, that's how fast you can go down through that hill with a twin steer. Made Mervin hang up on me one time doing that. He called me, and he says, what are you doing? I said, 32-wheel drift. And he hung up.
Is he still alive?
Oh, yeah. I see him every once in a while. Yeah. Yeah, he's a pretty good egg, actually. But he's had a hard life.
Well, Dwight, thanks for coming on and spending time with us. And Dad, thanks for coming in. Dad just showed up. I was like, might as well have Dad on.
Yeah, might as well.
We've interviewed him a couple of times, but trying to work through the audio here, so I think we'll be able to make it work for that one. But
see, my audio, you probably have to get rid of most of it.
No, it'll be fine. This is all real here. So, is there anybody back home you want to say hi to, or
no? I'm good.
Alrighty, Aaron, you got anything?
I'm good.
Did you get?
Here's some pictures. A couple of pictures.
Okay. Alrighty.
Yeah, the long nights.
Yeah, you too. I see everybody. We spent hours there.
$18.60?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the Russians still owned the place then.